Are being recorded by the Minuteman Media Network, and I'm calling it to order just past 7 o'clock. We have a consent agenda, town account warrants, one-day special licenses, the Concord Museum for March 28th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., 200 Lexington Road, wines only. Rotary Club of Concord, April 12th, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., 51 Walden Street, wine and malt. And minutes from January 26th, January 28th, February 4th, February 19th, and February 26th. I also want to acknowledge that we have all 5 of the members here. Welcome, Mike, back from period of time.
Well-earned vacation.
It's good to see you and good to have you back here and good to have the full group. So I will entertain a motion at this point.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are now review and approve executive session minutes from January 8th of 2018, number 1, number 2, and number 3, and I think not to be released, is that?
That's what I understood.
Yes.
I move, are we ready? Is there discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless
I
there's
move
a discussion.
to approve executive session minutes January 8th, 2018, number 1, number 2, and number 3, not to be released.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are now ready for a town manager's report. We have the deputy town manager, because I understand that Chris Whalen was not feeling well. And
Yep.
so welcome and good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's okay. Hello, Kate Hodges, Deputy Town Manager. The Town Manager's report just includes a few notices. The White Pond Public Forum was held at Harvey Wheeler last Thursday, the 14th, and actually there were over 100 folks in attendance. It was really really well attended. We got a lot of really constructive criticism. We got some feedback. We got some ideas and some things we have to work through. So we will be finalizing a Q&A where we're writing up a Word document that has most of the condensed versions of the frequently asked questions and their respective answers, along with the PowerPoint presentation that was made that evening. We'll be putting those up on the Recreation Department's website tomorrow afternoon.
And having attended that, I give the deputy town manager lots of kudos as the organizer of that event. I thought it went really, really well.
We laughed, we cried. The Concord cleanup is running from Saturday, March 30th to April 7th. The major effort is going to be on Saturday, March 6th. The NRC is handing out yellow bags for anybody who is interested in participating. They can pick those up at the Natural Resources Office at 141 Keyes Road. And full yellow bags full of cans and any other debris can be left along the roadside. The Agricultural Committee is hosting an event at Harvey Wheeler on March 21st at 7 p.m. to discuss seasonal cooking techniques for farm fresh foods. Those of you in the area of the Nishotic Country Club may notice some noises. They're conducting blasting there for the ledge in order to construct a new parking lot. And the town will be welcoming its first HVAC technician, Scott McCulley, who is going to be starting next week on the 27th. And he is the new addition to the ever-growing facilities staff under Facilities Director Ryan Orr.
And the White Pond, have there been applications, and how is that sort of coming? I think, wasn't there sent out to the previous members?
For membership?
Yes.
Yes, really well. Ryan Kane, who's our recreation director, and I met this morning. There's about 550 applications and memberships that have gone out. We are working since we heard from the community about the guest passes, so we're working on a differential between non-members and member guest passes. So we'll be talking about that, but we're thinking about having a 50-person maximum per day, and the total amount that we would allow is somewhere between 650 and 700 memberships for the year, at least for year one, until we can determine what our maximum capacity is. There's a lot of worry about overcrowding the beach, and we don't want to contribute to that.
Right. Any other questions of people or comments? Thank you. I'm going to not give a chair's report because we have a fairly busy meeting tonight, and I don't have anything of great import to add. So we will call on our town moderator to review the consent calendar. Good evening.
Good evening. Carmen Reese, Town Moderator. I have given you a draft consent calendar. Everybody should have that, I think, yes? Mm-hmm. And it has, I don't, was this on the website, Andrew, so that other folks are aware of it?
Just a second.
Okay. Should I try the other one?
Sure.
How's that one?
Better.
Yeah?
I can hear you just fine.
People here?
Okay. Okay, so we have the draft.
There we go.
The draft consent calendar. It has, I have placed these articles on the draft calendar because many of them have been on the consent calendar for a number of years in a row. I attended all 5 of the hearings, and all of the articles on the consent calendar were not controversial or provocative of a lot of questions at the hearings. Most of them are housekeeping or routine or administrative in nature. And I think, if my count is right, I think there are 17 articles here. In keeping with the practice that we adopted a few years ago to make sure that not all the enterprise funds end up on the consent calendar, we've rotated year by year something that comes off. And this year it's Article 43, which is the $4 million bond request for water infrastructure. And one of the reasons that I thought that would be a good one to keep off of the consent calendar is that at the hearings there were a number of questions about the potential cost arising from infrastructure issues associated with Nagog Pond, and that article on water infrastructure, Article 43, provides a perfectly appropriate vehicle for folks who are curious about those costs and where we are on those. So I bring you this to see whether you have any concerns or questions, or whether this looks all right to you as a consent calendar.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
This makes sense to me.
I thought that it makes a lot of sense, and it does speed up the process, and there's no need to kind of go through something that basically is kind of housekeeping anyway. So
Right. Well, and just a reminder, our process with the consent calendar is that any 5, we will review all the articles that are on it before we have a motion and a vote on it, and any 5 voters who wish to take any article and remove it from the consent calendar for a full presentation and deliberation may, of course, do so. Yeah. So that it'll be the same process. Okay, that's great. Thank you for your thoughts there. And the other issue with respect to town meeting that I wanted to raise for you is that I do intend to pre-schedule the 4 affordable housing articles, Articles 23, 24, 25, and 26, to be the first order of business that we take up on Tuesday night. I'm not setting a time, but they will be the first 4 articles that we take up. So, what that means procedurally is, in the unlikely event that we get to those articles on Monday night, we'll move past them and then come back to them at the beginning of Tuesday night. And if we haven't yet reached them, we'll jump ahead to take those 4 and then go back to take up what we didn't get to on Monday night.
And does that mean we'll be using the electronic voting for those articles?
Yes, but let me say two things. First is that the reason to pre-schedule these articles is that it's pretty important that they be taken up together because they're part of a single set of recommendations to address a single problem. And so I wouldn't want to have these split between two different sessions of town meeting for conversations. That's the reason to pre-schedule them, just to be sure we get all four of them on one night. The electronic voting, the motion that the select board will be presenting after we go through our demonstration on the electronic clickers and have a couple of test votes will be to use the clickers only in a situation where I can't tell the vote visually, so that we're going to have to count it. And instead of a standing counted vote, which takes us at least 15 minutes, we'll use the clickers. Or on any vote that requires a 2/3 or greater quorum. I'm not sure we actually have any of those coming up on Tuesday night, but if we did, I would want to use the clickers for those. That's the other place where we have the potential for saving a lot of time.
I have a question. Since you mentioned the four housing articles, there seems to be a lot of confusion about Article 25 and 26. Should they be voted on affirmatively and become a home rule petition? What is the process from that point?
So that is a decision that you all have to make, because it so happens that I had a conversation with town council about this today. Because the question had been posed to me, if these votes get an affirmative vote at town meeting and they go to the legislature and they become special legislation, must they come back to town meeting or not? As the articles are currently drafted, they will not come back to town meeting. But if the board wishes to craft a motion under 25 and 26 so that the legislature, you'd have to modify the proposed legislation to make that happen. Because right now the legislation says that it'll be effective immediately, period. And that's apparently typically done to avoid otherwise 60-day waiting period that you have on any legislation that's enacted. So they stick that in there to make it effective immediately. But you certainly can add another clause that says that it'll become effective in the town upon a positive vote by town meeting.
Subsequent to the action by the
Subsequent to the action being enacted by legislation. That's what we did with the senior means tested property tax exclusion. You also could add, if you wanted to, that there be a vote at the polls as well. And that also was part of the senior means tested property tax exclusion. If you wish to add either or both of those things, that would be within the scope of the article. Those are details on how the articles would be adopted. Town council's comfortable that they're within the scope, and so am I. So it's just a question of drafting the motions. So that's a policy decision for you all.
A simple, straightforward motion. It's not
Simple, straightforward. You would have to, what it would mean is that already there's going to be a change in Article 26 that's going to mean that article can't be moved as printed in the warrant. So it's going to have to be printed on a handout. It's going to be a small change. And you'd have to do that now with Article 25 as well, because there'd be some change in the text of the proposed legislation to add in a subsequent vote at town meeting. So you'd just have to have that in a handout in a red line so people saw what the change was from the warrant language. But that's it, and it's otherwise very straightforward to do it.
The town vote would not take place until after the legislature approves the
Yeah, so you'd basically need two votes. The first vote is the vote of the town to send it to the legislature, and if the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, deems us capable of exercising our own judgment, then it would come back to us and town meeting would have to vote again. Now that we see, and it strikes me, well, Well, one of the good things about doing it that way is that in the event there are changes in the legislation that are imposed by the legislature, you have an opportunity to decide whether that's still okay with the town. And the vote at the polls, it is a major change, and if you felt that you wanted a referendum vote on it, that was done with the senior means tested tax. It's done with Proposition 2.5. It would be a thing that you could do.
And that too would be included in the amendment.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good about that.
So that's,
The vote could proceed or follow the
yes,
town meeting vote, it doesn't matter.
same as with Proposition 2.5, it could go either way, right?
Okay. So there are at least one, if not two other moments that Concord would have could have.
Currently, it's not written as.
Currently, it's not written that
If-
way.
If it was passed
Right.
this way.
Right. If it's moved as it's printed in the warrant, currently it does not come back to town meeting and it doesn't go to a vote at the polls. But if you want it to do either of those things, you can do that by you don't even have to amend. You're just going to write an amendment that says those things are part of the exercise.
So it would not be a formal amendment to the motion.
It doesn't have to be a form, it's
statement.
just part of the motion. Yeah,
Thank you for
Yes.
counsel on that.
yeah,
It's
okay,
helpful.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen.
Well, look forward to infinite wisdom on the part of the legislature. We are now ready to, for the Select Board to take position on the remaining warrant articles. I believe there's a number of them, and we'll proceed, see which ones we can feel comfortable taking positions on tonight, and otherwise, we do have another meeting, but hopefully we can get through them. Article 12 is the first one, the public school capital projects, in the amount of $900,000, and that is basically for the purpose of maintaining and keeping the schools in a good working order. I don't know if people have any questions or comments on that.
Well, as the member of the Select Board who's probably had the most recent contact with the middle schools, having had both of my daughters go through Peabody in the last, I guess, decade now, and knowing that Peabody has only received a new boiler since then, I can only support affirmative action on Article 12.
Anybody else have any comments? It seems to me to be somewhat of a, we do this every year, they have to maintain and keep it up, and we do that with the public buildings, so I would be in favor of it and be willing to entertain a motion, therefore, for favorable action. Do we have a motion to that?
I move, excuse me for my delay, I move that we take affirmative action on warrant Article 12.
12, yes.
Do we need to include the amount?
Of,
I believe we do.
okay. I move that we,
In the amount of
in the
$900,000?
amount of $900,000 for construction renovations, repairs, and related work.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We now move on, Article 14, which is the Concord Middle School feasibility study in the amount of $1,500,000. I think this is a warrant article that's received a lot of attention and a lot of work on the part of the school committee to answer a lot of questions. I don't know if people have any comments that they would like to make. I was initially quite skeptical about this warrant article, but I've attended the school committee hearings. I've gone to the open house that they've had on both, and I've been in receipt of a number of emails clarifying the position, and I'm in favor of this at this point. I think they have done an excellent job of describing the need. One of the questions was the notion that somehow an awful lot of money for a feasibility study. And I think the explanation that I'm satisfied with is that the term feasibility study was really more taken from the Mass School Board Administration, and it's broader than just a feasibility study. It deals with all aspects of what a new building requirements would be, and it's basically on the principle of measure twice and cut once. We don't want to have a lot of mistakes when we're going through the process. This study is to ensure that we would not have those mistakes and that any issues would be flagged early and that there would be professional review of what is going to be the final proposal. We would have numbers when we come next year to planning on a actual building. We would have accurate or as accurate as possible numbers. I do have two concerns. One is that there's an assumption based in this article that we will be going and having a single middle school on the property at Sanborn. And that has not been something that the town has made a determination. It's something that the school board, after a thorough review, has made the determination. The second issue, in my mind, has to do with one of the reasons I'm in favor of this is the current two-school situation really is impractical and inefficient, and there will be substantial savings as a result of completion of a single school, estimated at this point well above $500,000. And I haven't heard how that money is going to be located, whether that will go into assisting in the payment of the debt that we'll be incurring. That would be my hope, but I think that's something that we have to work out.
Down the road.
But I am in favor of this, and I'm willing to listen to anybody else.
So I think I share some of the same concerns that you raised, but I think it would help us if we had a little bit of the history. I know I've heard it because I've gone to several meetings and I went through the walkthrough at Sanborn, but I don't know that everybody has heard how we arrived at town meeting this year with a request for $1.5 million for a new school. So I know that there's a lot of work, and you even mentioned it. If someone could just walk us through what went into getting us to this point that puts it on the warrant this year, that would be really helpful.
And can I add to that before they start responding to the questions? You know, I know that numerous countless hours and meetings have already been spent addressing this issue. I attended the Peabody Forum on Saturday, and there are still questions, I think, in people's minds about the impact of the potential estimated cost for the project as well as the impact of the tax impact on people, and I've seen different figures at this point. So I think it would be helpful for the public as well as for myself and for the rest of us, I hope, to once again be walked through some of that information because there's been various versions of this.
And Linda, when you say the estimated impact, are you describing the estimated impact of the feasibility study or of the larger project?
The larger project.
That's what I assumed,
Because
yeah.
I think that relates to this, yeah.
I should note that we do have the superintendent and the administrator and a couple of members of the board, which they've all been extremely open and ready to come to meetings and to answer questions. So whichever one of you want to take that on, or tag team, however you want to do it.
I will join you. I'm going to bring up this. Can I also? Hi, thanks for having me up here. I'm Heather Bout, 33 Alden Road, but also on the school committee and chair of the facilities planning committee that was created a couple of years ago to look at all of this. So I have a couple of things here that can help go through this. Let's start with, so there are two questions out. Whoops, does that work? So two questions. The first being review kind of what we've gone through. That would be helpful?
Yeah.
So basically, a couple of years ago, we got to the point where we realized that it was time to either invest significant money into the two middle school buildings to keep them going, or do something else. But basically, before we invested money in them, we wanted to get a real feel for, are they viable and does that make sense to be putting money into those buildings? So in 2016, we created the Facilities Planning Committee. That committee had 15 community representatives, school and resident community. So it was 5 community representatives, school administration, teachers, parents, school committee, as well as representatives who are not necessarily just parents in the schools. That group met monthly for over a year and hired an architectural firm, Feingold Alexander Architects, to basically to do first of all, a full existing conditions report of the two buildings so we could really understand what's going on in there, what's the capability of the buildings, and also to answer 3 primary questions for us. The first, and I think the most important to kick off the discussion, was what would it take to keep the buildings going for 10 years? So we really wanted to understand, do we have to do something now or can we put this off for 10 years so that we're not doing something so close to the high school building? The next 2 questions were, what would it look like in terms of estimations to renovate or rebuild? So Feingold Alexander did a full study of the buildings. They came back, first of all, with the conclusion that the existing buildings are obsolete and really not worth investing in. That comes to the question of the 10 years. So they did a full breakout of what would need to be done to the buildings to keep them really educationally relevant and viable for the next 10 years. And their estimate was an investment of $34 to $47 million. That's just to keep them going for 10 years. That's not even permanent. So that would mean coming to the town asking for $34 million to invest now and coming back in 10 years to ask for a new building.
And there would be no savings in terms of energy or other
Exactly. So the Facilities Planning Committee, which again was a representative group, and I know part of the question here is, how and when does the community get to participate in this discussion? And what we did there, I think there are 2 ways that the community has participated. One is that this committee was a representative group, so we really did try to pull representatives from the community because this is such a detailed discussion. You can't have this whole discussion at town meeting, obviously. So that group was pulled together to do the research and create a recommendation. In addition, that group has presented throughout the course of the past 2 years in public, and we've certainly had public discussions of it both at those meetings and at the school committee meetings. So Feingold Alexander really didn't they didn't recommend the option of staying in the building for 10 years because of the fact that it would be such a significant investment and then you'd still have to build a new building. The next thing that they did was looked at the various options. And I do have, if it's helpful, a printout here that is just the high level of kind of the various options that they looked at. I can give each of you some, and I have, not enough for everybody.
Is that available that we can put up on the screen or not?
Yes, if I can
Andrew,
hook
are
mine
you
in.
capable of doing that?
Is that a...
Oh,
Oh, perfect. Okay, great.
It's different from this.
no.
That's a difference.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Well, here you go. I think it's going to get up there anyway. However, I'll start to go through it. What you'll see from left to right are the various options that Feingold Alexander highlighted for us. The first, because we didn't want to just assume that we're going to jump into a project, was staying in the two buildings and really looking at the question, could that make any sense? Could we update both the buildings and make them last for another 50 years? So the existing condition option that you'll see on the left for when we get it up there was that estimate. It was almost $68 million. I should also note, and I know that we're still waiting for this up here, I should note all of the numbers that we're going to talk about right now are 2017 dollars. That was 2 years ago. When we get to the numbers that equate to a new building, what we're talking about now as an estimate is significantly higher than these numbers from 2 years ago because of the fact that escalation in construction costs is so high on a year-over-year basis right now. So we are talking in 2017 dollars right now, which are not quite relevant now. They will all have grown. There we go. Thank you so much, Kate. So as you see on the left, the existing condition and staying in the existing buildings was estimated to cost about $68 million, 67.9. Both the Facilities Planning Committee and the School Committee agreed that this was not a great use of taxpayer dollars, and we didn't recommend going forward with that plan. So then you'll see the rest. Options 1 and 2 are both renovation concepts, and options 3A and 3B are new building concepts. The ways they differ, option 1 was really just a simple addition of a classroom wing onto the Sanborn building. Option 2 was more of a significant reconfiguration of Sanborn. I'm sorry they don't each have titles. I'm dealing with the Feingold Alexander slides, and I couldn't add too much to them. Now, Feingold Alexander recommended against option 1, the simple addition of a classroom wing, because it wouldn't actually fulfill our needs. Option 2, they considered one of a couple viable options, but then you start to look at the cost comparison. So option 2 was significant reconfiguration, but it would keep part of the building. You would keep the existing gymnasium and auditorium and what we would call the music wing, which is some classrooms there. You would still have those parts of the building which are old, inefficient, and would need regular maintenance on an ongoing basis, just like the older buildings. So then you start to look at the new building options. Basically, the reason it's 3A and B is because we were looking at the MSBA specs. The Mass School Building Authority has very specific limitations on what they cover in terms of reimbursement for middle schools. They do not cover an auditorium or a full-size gym or anything like that. So 3A was a building exactly to the MSBA specs, and 3B was a building including some other elements that Concord might want. Feingold's recommendation was that they thought Concord was more likely to look for a building along the concept of 3B, which was a new building, with a gym and an auditorium. Again, this is not a design or a concept that we are tied to at all. It was a high-level concept to give us a price range estimate.
3A is about 10% less cost.
Right.
And the assumption is that would hold still true today in today's dollars.
Right, if you escalate them out, right, 3A would still be probably about 10% less than 3B. So basically, this compares the concepts of the reconfiguration versus the new building. You then need to really look, though, at the other elements that come into play. So we did a cost-benefit analysis. If you look at the costs of reconfiguration, it starts to cost a little more than what you actually see on this sheet. The first and potentially largest one is the ramifications of the hazardous materials that are in that building and that we know that are there. Although obviously in this number there's some estimate for remediation and abatement, that's a number that we know from experience at the high school and elsewhere can mushroom once you get inside a building. It can really grow quickly, and it's unpredictable. So that's a big unknown. That number could all of a sudden skyrocket once you get in there and you're trying to effectively execute abatement on a school with well-known asbestos and various hazardous materials. You also obviously have to deal with moving the students somewhere else. So you're going to have to create a relocation plan, get them completely out of the building, because you can't have kids or anyone really anywhere near that building once you start digging into it and all those particles are in the air. In addition, you're going to end up with a building that's still partially a very old building that's just going to be less energy efficient than a potentially new one, and is still going to have ongoing maintenance costs for the old section that are much higher than a new building would be. So basically, the two committees, again, the Facilities Planning Committee and the School Committee, both looked at these, compared them, and based on the analysis, primarily cost analysis, and also the efficiency, decided that our recommendation is that building a new building is more effective and cost efficient. Now, we should clarify that's a recommendation. It's not a decision. It's those two committees' recommendation that is what we're bringing to town meeting. So based on that recommendation, we have created Article 14 that funds a feasibility study to look at the feasibility of building a new building on the Sanborn site, as well as creating a schematic design for that new building. Does that help with the overview? I don't want to go on for too long, but I want to make sure I cover what, what you were looking for.
Thank
I
you.
think so.
Okay.
So the numbers we're looking at were 2000.
So these are 2017, yes. So the numbers we're looking at today, if you start to estimate out the cost of a new building, the reality that we're dealing with right now, if you look at escalation costs in construction of middle schools in particular, from the MSBA statistics, between 2010 and 2016, average escalation per year was 6.93%. So in our estimates, we're not assuming that it's up at 7%, although the reality is we're hearing from people right now that escalation is somewhere between 7 and 9%. However, we're not using those numbers. We're using estimates of between 3 and 7% escalation, just to stay conservative. And with that, we're ending up with an estimated placeholder building value of a new building at somewhere in the $90 million range. If you were to escalate out the renovation option, that would probably be in the $80 million range. So again, still about a 10% or slightly less difference.
And that's based on a construction date of?
That's based on feasibility study in 2019,
Right.
which is actually starting construction in 2021.
Okay.
Two questions I have. One is I just note that Article 14 initially has said it's to be, these funds would be expended under the direction of the school committee. I understand that we have item 13 tonight that we are going to review and approve a middle school building committee, so it would be under the jurisdiction of the select board, correct?
Or under the jurisdiction of the
Building
we're working
committee.
on the wording,
Yeah.
but we are working with an amendment to our motion so that it would be under the jurisdiction of, although we can't say the building committee because it's not yet created, so we're working on the wording, but
Yeah.
under the jurisdiction of a building committee. Do you want to clarify anymore? Through the
Yeah,
town manager.
Through the town manager, yeah.
Carmen and I have gone back and forth even today.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes, to answer your question, yes, we're addressing that. It will not be under the jurisdiction directly of the school committee.
And has there been thought given to where the funds that are going to result from the savings might be able to be directed?
Yes, so here's the thing. We don't have the ability to just decide that those dollars will go to a stabilization fund because we can't actually keep them in our budget if we don't have a place to use those dollars. We can't budget for a stabilization fund. That said, what we will do is decrease our budget by those operating.
There can be an understanding, in essence. That
Exactly, that we would decrease by approximately $500,000 a year, a little over $500,000 a year. And then it would be really up to the select board,
Yeah.
Ideally, to create a stabilization fund.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great idea to create one and be putting money into it every year. It's just not, we can't legally actually create it and divert the money, but we can save that much money that you could then divert into a stabilization fund.
And has there been an analysis of how that would affect the tax increase, the proposed or anticipated tax increase?
Yeah, how the building would affect it?
No, well, how the savings, if the board sets up a stabilization fund, would that presumably would reduce the tax increase.
Right.
And so I think it's important for the public to kind of understand that the notion that it might be $1,000 or $1,100 tax increase in the first few years, really, we might be able to reduce that.
We hopefully would be able to lessen that somewhat by the existence of a stabilization fund, by the savings that are operational.
I think the other factor is then it's likely if this were to go through and be funded, that the Peabody location would be turned over back to the town and either could be sold or utilized for some other purpose.
Exactly. That's a vote that the school committee would take. We have committed at this point that our plan is to surplus that back to the town. We've certainly heard various ideas in terms of interest for that building. Again, we would hand it over to you, and it's completely up to you what you do with it. But yes, we've heard everything from selling it to create stabilization funds to using it for, affordable housing, office space, all the various needs that have come up.
And given the debt that we're carrying on other buildings, what is that crossover point?
I'm glad you asked. It actually works out quite well. So the Alcott debt comes offline in 2025.
Okay.
Then Thoreau comes off in 2026, and Willard ends in 2029. I do, that's right. I do have a chart. I'm in the wrong pile. Did we print that one? I don't think we do.
We'll pull it up.
Never mind. Good thing I did. Anyway, basically, as those come offline, as those debt services end, is about when the peak debt service for a new building would begin. So we would be at least kind of ending those as we start a new one.
And have any thoughts about what that impact is on the homeowner? Because
Yes.
if at the peak, this is $1,000 per household.
Right.
Debt for middle schools, what happens when you take the other projects offline because we've retired the debt? A net increase of?
Well, the average over
That's a
the
good
25
question.
years
haven't-
is $700 and something dollars.
Right. So
It goes down.
exactly.
I'm just trying to get a sense of.
A sense of how much it is
those
less,
debts are
right, exactly.
retired, what is the financial impact on?
So we have not calculated the
That's fine.
per household impact of the various elementary schools, and so what we'll be taking away from those.
So what
But it will certainly come down a little bit as
As there's a
middle
crossover.
school peaks, exactly.
So one of the charts that I've seen that was circulated for the $1,000 that you're referencing was based on a $45,000 bond, not 90,000. So I,
Million.
yeah.
Not 45
Million.
million versus 90 million.
Million, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So I did, hence my earlier question about having that information.
I'm not sure where 45 came from. The number that we've all been working with and the Finance Committee has been working with has been a $90 million debt service, which is over a 25-year term at a 4.25% interest rate. We assumed...
This was a chart just showing the tax levy input, so that's why I want to see what other information is available.
Okay. Mike, you had a
No, I was pointing, I think the Finance Committee has developed a chart that sort of shows that. Finance Director, and I think it would just be an important component of your presentation. I can see one that shows you the total tax levy
Right.
made up of the various school bonds and how
I
they
see.
change over
Okay.
time.
Yes, absolutely.
And what the average burden would be going forward. It would make a,
Okay, I see.
I think it would make
I
a
think that's the one.
instructive.
Sorry, I misunderstood what you're asking. I think that's what Lori and Jared are pulling up.
We're talking
Yes.
now on the assumption that we're kind of debating whether there should be a $90 million school, not whether there should
Right,
be
exactly.
a $1.5 million study.
No, that's
But it
right.
is a relevant conversation because
But
we're
that's
being
the-
asked to make an initial investment of $1.5 million and to create a building committee now without having made a decision that we're building a new middle school.
Yeah.
So the timing just feels a little off, and that's why we're asking
Yeah.
the financial questions come from our
Absolutely.
board.
I think they're all very relevant questions, because you're right. In order to make this $1.5 million decision, you have to know whether you're comfortable likely moving forward with the rest. I do want to point out to your point, Alice, and this is a question you asked earlier, I think it's really important. That question of input and what does the building look like and what kind of decisions are we making, what kind of building are we designing, that's a really critical part of the process. And what we're asking for now, this feasibility and design phase, are the platform for that discussion. So the feasibility study itself is more something that we outsource, but as part of that design, the schematic design process, and this actually will come up as a comment later when you're talking about the charge, we would love to see that the charge for the building committee includes the responsibility to manage a really comprehensive community discussion process as part of that schematic design task, because that's a really important discussion to have. And really, it's hard to have it until you have these things in place.
So I totally agree that public input will be critical in designing a school that we'd all want our children to go to. The question really is we haven't decided that we're building a new middle school, but we're taking all these steps by investing $1.5 million now for the feasibility study. And we're developing a school building committee, which just seems just a little backwards to keep moving ahead until maybe this is the vote at town meeting, is whether we are ready to build a new middle school. We're just not saying it that way, because the first step is to do this feasibility study, but partially that decision was made by the school facilities committee already, based on the Feingold report, that it makes sense to build a new middle school because, waiting, it's going to be expensive to keep them running. It's not, since my kids have been in the middle school, which is a pretty long time ago, the conversation about two schools has been on the table.
Right.
It's, it's been in conversation a long time.
Right. We know it's not efficient.
We knew it back then, and we certainly know it now.
Yep.
It's just that I just don't have, I'm wondering, is this the referendum that's coming to town meeting, is are we ready to build a new middle school with the recommendation from the school committee, but that, yes, the school committee has decided now's the time to build the new school. I feel like we're jumping ahead, and I just want to make sure we're figuring out how best to follow the process that gets us to where we might end up, we might not.
Yeah, and I guess we kind of feel like that has been part of our process to the best of our ability over the past 2 years, is we've tried to make that a very public discussion as we went through, and we invited input along the way. Not quite as many info sessions as we're having now, but this is not a scalable solution, what we're all doing right now. We're hosting, 2 a week. But we have certainly invited in input and discussion along the way, and created that committee that was representative to try to get to a recommendation. So I guess we feel like, and feel free to jump in, but I guess we feel like we have tried to take that input and make our recommendation, and now we're to the point of putting it out to the town and saying, here's our recommendation. Do you agree? Is this how we want to move forward?
I understand Alice's point. It's a good one. But on the other hand, I don't know how I would be able to make an informed judgment about whether or not we should have a middle school if we didn't have some feasibility study that would help us understand what it would look like, what it would actually cost, how long it would take, all that kind of stuff.
It will definitely inform.
For me, it's a question of, are we willing to invest a certain amount of money to get some clarity and some perspective on what it is we might or might not do in the future. I get your point, Alice, to be sure, but I think on the other hand, I would want to see, for any significant project like this, some kind of study that showed me what we were going to do, how much it was going to cost, what it was going to look like, so I could say, ooh,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a year from now we'll have this conversation and the decision is, no, that's a terrible idea. We hate the design. We don't want to do that.
Well, no, I doubt that would be the point.
But you're right. The feasibility study is a critical piece of the information.
But that becomes a design vote, not a whether to build now vote. And those are two different decisions, right? Because we may have the same schematic designs 5 years from now. The question is, are we ready to take on the debt of a $92 million investment in new schools now? And I guess that's basically what this is asking.
Could I just
Basically, the answer
ask,
is yes.
also, has the, and I don't think that the community has necessarily been wildly involved necessarily yet, although tonight, later in the agenda, you're going to hear, but in 2017, the town allocated $250,000 for, under the town manager, to review our municipal facilities assessment. And we're coming up on about 2/3 of that being done. And I can tell you unofficially that what's being said is that we don't have any facilities that are necessarily sufficient for what we're trying to do, including council on aging, childcare, but the big heavy hitters are our DPW can't sustain what we're trying to do. Our police and fire are inefficient, can't sustain what we do. We literally have people in closets in this building, what used to be closets, and we're building alcoves for people to be in.
We at Sanborn. I agree.
And so the thought is that we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars on one side of the school, one side of the town infrastructure, and zero on the other. And so I think that it's hard this year to ask when we don't have either feasibility plan, because one project is essentially going to delay the other. I mean, it just is what it is. And so we're talking about, a $60 million townhouse renovation coupled with another $70, million DPW. And, where is all that coming from, and how is that phased, and what are the community priorities? So it's a tough...
I think it is tough. I do think, though, that, often in town government, all the measures we don't analyze, on a perfect time schedule. I guess what I'm kind of oriented towards is we have, the school committee did on 2 occasions seek to get funding for this general plan from the Mass School Board Association. My understanding is that you are going to make another application, even though the expectation is that it won't be approved. But it potentially could be, and potentially that would be something that I think the middle school board would be looking at. I guess my concern, frankly, is I think that I hate to be wasting money on these 2 inefficient schools. I think schools are a very high priority, and I just think we need to go ahead and to kind of at least find out how can we do this in the most efficient way. I'm not convinced, frankly, that option 3A isn't the best option, but I think I'm not the one making that decision. But I do think in terms of what we're dealing tonight is whether to vote for approval of this warrant article, and I think it's an appropriate funding to do. So I don't know whether, if people want more time to get more information, we have another meeting on April 1st, we can decide, or we don't have to decide until the night of, but it strikes me that we sort of have an awful lot of information now and ready to go forward.
If there's one more here, in case it helps.
Well, the only thing I would add is I know that there is concern among some people, or I would put it more of confusion perhaps among some people, as to why all 4 of the components need to be done in conjunction with one another, or should they be done in 2 separate forms, which I think is what the finance committee was looking at.
Exactly. And we actually have looked into it in great detail and found that really the only efficient way to do it is to do all of them together. This is a memo that Jared Stanton has put together to describe the details. Jared, do you want to come walk everyone through it? And I will hand out copies again. Here we go. Thank you.
Hi there, Jared Stanton, Director of Finance and Operations. So we put this $1.5 million number together and a budget for it after numerous requests for it. And what I did is I talked to a number of business managers in the field, number of OPMs, number of architects, and the way that I felt most comfortable breaking this out was these 4 sections. Number 1, you need an OPM. That is the owner's project manager. We're estimating that to be about $300,000. What that person does is a professional construction management firm hired by the building committee to provide professional project management services. So they run the project. That would be the first thing that we would need to do, is hire an OPM. Secondly, about $400,000 would be the amount for the feasibility study. The feasibility study, what that will do, will generate an initial space summary based on the district's educational program, establish design parameters, develop alternatives to construct a new middle school building on the Sanborn site, perform preliminary and final evaluation of alternatives, and recommend the most cost-effective and educationally appropriate solution. Next would be the schematic design. We're estimating that to be about $500,000. Again, what the schematic design will do, the project team will develop a robust schematic design of sufficient detail to establish the scope, budget, and schedule upon which to evaluate the basis for for the proposed project. Lastly, you have to have a contingency, whether it be for hazardous materials, geo-environmental engineering, and other services. What this would do is you need to understand the space. For every $10 that you spend, for every $1 that you spend on the schematic and the feasibility, I'm hearing you're going to save $10 down the line. That was from every single person that I talked to. They said the more money now you spend, the less you'll spend on the project, and you'll be able to have enough information so that we have more competitive bids, which again ultimately will save the town money. So from everyone I've talked to, these should all be done in conjunction because it's just best to have all four done at the same time, especially the schematic.
Then you're ready to go out and
Correct.
make a decision.
Yep.
So let me just ask a
Please.
clarifying question to that. It is common that you hire an OPM when there's a major construction project that we undertake. Are you suggesting that this is a term limited for just the feasibility period, the 300,000 of this time limited, or is this the OPM that will carry through the entire
No,
construction project?
this is, right now, since we're not going through MSBA, this would be, we would bid out for the OPM for the schematic design and the feasibility study. So the $300,000 that I'm estimating would be for both the feasibility and the schematic,
But
But
not
not
for
the-
the construction?
right.
not the full project.
Right.
No. No.
Which is, again, I know that, and I think that Alice is right to keep the conversation on a forward-thinking, honest debate of, you know, the path towards a new building. But nothing here commits it.
Correct.
And that's, I think, really important to remember. I mean,
So at what point do we have that? At what point do we have commitment that we want a new middle school now? I mean, what is that? Do we make that decision? Is it a recommendation from the school committee?
No, we have to go to the town
So
meeting.
at what point do we go to town meeting? Is it when we ask for 1.5 million?
We would have the feasibility study completed.
right?
If we pass this piece of it that we're working on for a building committee, they would report to us, and we would take that under advisement, and we would then decide to put a warrant article on that would fund whatever comes out of this kind of, or not. I don't know.
So I'm just curious, I understand that, but we have the results of a feasibility study that did current site, discussion, what's wrong?
Facilities.
Yeah, the facilities. Why isn't this the feasibility study that is the argument that says, with this in hand, our recommendation is that we really should build a new school now? So that this is the referendum question, because we have a pretty detailed analysis of what it costs to maintain two buildings and the projected cost for operational increases to keep them running in good condition. Isn't this sufficient to make the decision that now's the time to decide that we
Not
need
for
a
me.
school?
If I can speak, there's a big difference between a facility study and a feasibility schematic design. That project was about $250,000, so a lot less time went into that, not putting, the full groups together, building committee. It won't give you nearly the amount of information that a feasibility study and schematic design would give you.
And
to
no
make it-
hazardous material assessment.
Right, because we need to take what is in the scope of those two projects and develop some bids for those. That report will not allow us to generate enough bids to get competitive prices.
Well, I would just suggest that one of the things I think is really important about the feasibility study is the open public process.
Yeah.
And that, with all the complete respect to the Feingold process and the facilities process, it was a very different animal. And I think that what I've understood is that we're really talking about a much bigger and open conversation.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Jared.
Great, thank you.
Jared.
Thank you.
What are people's thoughts of making a determination at this point? Do we want more time, or are we ready to?
I'm ready.
I'm ready. Linda, how about?
Yes, that's fine.
Then I hear a motion, or my hearing aid not working?
I move that we vote affirmative action on warrant Article 14 for $1.5 million for a feasibility study for the potential of a new middle school.
That will be under the direction of a middle school building committee that we hope to set up.
Well, why don't you call it under the town manager?
Under the
Under the
town
town
manager.
manager, and we will
Yeah.
get to the rest
Very
of it
good.
later on.
That would be my
Okay.
recommendation.
Yes.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just want to thank Heather and the school
Yes.
folks for helping clarify, because I think that what happens getting to this point is pretty significant, and not the whole, I know a large part of the community, the school community has been involved with some of this. The rest of the town may not have, including the select board.
And it's a scary amount, you know, that,
Thank
yeah.
you for taking in all this information and processing it. I know it's a lot of information. Thank you all.
We're now ready to move on to Article 16, which is the Concord Carlisle Regional High School Capital Project, which is the reconstruction of the access road and the design and construction of a parking lot in the amount of $2 million. I don't know if anybody has comments or questions.
I have a hard time with this one. I feel like, I know that students want to park at the high school, but I don't know that that's necessarily the sustainable way that we should be moving forward. I'm concerned about agreeing to an enlarged parking lot. Oh, not close enough, sorry. Enlarging the parking lot to allow students to have more parking at the high school. We have quite an expensive bus fleet. We're talking about changing buses to more electric buses. We ought to be using the systems that we have in place rather than building and accommodating the use of personal vehicles. If we had parking, say, somewhere else at Crosby's and had a little shuttle bus that went up, just so that we can avoid the $2 million cost of having to build a new parking lot. And I know there's concern from parents that they don't want to pick up their kids from school and it's too time-consuming, but, so that was my first concern. The second one,
I want to be sure it's clear that 1.2 of that is paving of the access road.
so tell me about that, because I don't
Why don't-
understand
why
the
don't
need for
you-
paving
yeah.
of the access road.
So this project really has two components to it. The first is, Lori Hunter, Superintendent of Schools, thank you. The first is the paving of the access road that goes along in front of Beatty and does the whole loop from Thoreau to Walden. That was never paved and reconstructed after the building project. So we've been limping along, patching and patching and patching, trying to keep the road in a sustainable condition. It's been a challenge for sure, and potholes and things like that. So part of 1.2 of the 2 million, which we think are really quite conservative estimates. We've just finished working with Gale Engineering. You'll remember the special town meeting article that we did not move was to fund an engineering study of the campus and make sure that we brought forward numbers that we felt confident would be the maximum we would need to complete any projects within the scope of what was being considered. So the two that have come forward in the warrant of that study that Gale Engineering did is the paving of the roadway and then restoring parking to what it was prior to the demolition of the old high school. So 1.2 is for the paving, lighting upgrades, greater ADA access, sidewalk repair, really just bringing it up to be on par with the rest of the campus and make that the long-term, really it's the final leg of the building project that didn't get complete. The second piece is the parking. So what's proposed is 104 spot parking lot down at the upper end of the landfill space. We've
purposely left room so that we, if down the road wanted to put a track on the campus, that's way down the road, hypothetical, just let's not build something that then precludes us from doing something else later. On the upper end of the landfill area, put in a 104-spot parking lot. Really, and in the research we've done over the last number of months, trying to explain why we had hit such a peak demand and energy about parking, we really are at a place where we're trying to restore to what we had prior to the old high school. So it is, additional feels like almost a different definition at this point. Now we're understanding why we're feeling so pinched, because what was available before is no longer available. So we've strategized that as many ways as possible. We agree with the sustainability conversation. We're working really closely with Kate Hanley. I've put together a sustainability committee with a wide number of stakeholders. I meet with the Green Team at the high school regularly. We are very committed to that and want that to be the effort that we go. We just need some relief in the meantime. It is about the kids to a large extent. We are not this year parking juniors on the campus. We told them in the fall that would not be an option. We have tried a great number of strategies to work with what we've had over the last 2 years. We numbered the spaces. We borrowed rented some spots from Beatty, which Kate will look at me and go, that didn't work. It's still a challenge. We are always trying to make sure Beatty has its access to its own spots and the creepage doesn't continue. We've really tried a lot of different things, and it just hasn't relieved the issue. Visitors also have an enormously hard time parking right now. We have 10 available visitor spots. I will sit at a parents' association meeting, and the first thing they want to say to me is, where did you park, Dr. Hunter? Because we couldn't find a place, and we parked illegally, or in worst case, they're taking kids' spots, which I've had a student write a note on my car window and say, you're in my space. It's very ongoing and chronic, and we do believe we need to relieve the stress of the kids, but it's also about the adult and community use of the school. We cannot host things. Even college fairs are really challenging during the school day when we want to bring them in at lunch. We have to really choreograph and craft what our options are going to be. Won't change with the additional 100 spaces because you're saying that that's your bottom need. So you'll still have those. Well, we'll expand the visitor spots, so we'll have a lot more wiggle room to work with there than we do currently. Is it going to solve all of our problems? What it's going to do is maximize the potential for parking on that campus. We've been working with the department leaders here in town. We have restrictions in terms of impervious surface and the watershed into the public water supply. We know the maximum that would ever be considered is to restore it to what it used to be. And so then the answer is we have all we're going to have, and we have to learn how to live within that, and we can build that long-term plan.
What percentage of the 104 slots would be student?
We haven't settled on this exactly, but my guess would be somewhere between 80%. So I'm not going to say it's not targeted to students. It is, but we also need relief with the visitor spots. And really what we'd probably do is shift who's down at the lower end of the campus and open up more visitor spots up top so that we could do that. We did push the staff up by Doug Whitefield, trying to maximize the use of that. So we would probably reallocate a little bit.
I have to say, as a mom of a senior who still hasn't taken advantage of her ability to drive, and someone who's been very active in the electric bus and the sustainability interests of the town, I am stuck because I feel like our bus fleet is underused. And somewhere in this, I would like to see a pressure point on the use of the buses that we supply at great town and school expense for the purpose of moving students to and from school. It is a frustrating, and I know it's a frustrating.
Yeah, it's a conundrum. We have a really, really active student body, so they are there at all sorts of hours, depending on the clubs they're in or the sports they're playing or all of that. So to say there's one set time that we can run those buses to get everybody on is just a really big challenge. Because of the strength we have in terms of how much our kids are actively participating. And that's driving much of it, whether it be at school or at jobs or whatever it is.
I I would just comment that having lived through a major modernization construction project at Peter Buckley Terrace, both Phase 1 and Phase 2, I understand that there are constraints that are on the initial amount of money that's available to complete the first phase
Correct.
of your project, and I think you said
Yes.
this was an unfinished piece of
Correct.
business that probably should have been included initially had there not been those monetary constraints. I also will comment on that later, that same concept later when we talk about the charge for the town middle school project. But you're faced with a dilemma, and I think it is important to put the pressure points on and to try to bring students along with our concerns about sustainability, but there's a certain point at which you still have to solve a problem, and I see the dilemma, I guess is what
Just one last comment. We are expecting some economy of scale here if we do the paving and the parking lot together. We can't get to what those numbers are until we have the design that's embedded in the cost to put out to bid. So there is hope and expectation that we will be under the $2 million. And there are contingencies in there that we aren't exactly sure we will need to the full extent either, because we just have to be sure we can address drainage issues and keep the public water supply safe and things like that. So we do expect the $2 million to be a very conservative number, and we will come in under that.
Have you had conversations with Concord Public Works for a sort of a cost estimate to know? They do a lot of road paving.
They do, and we will certainly work with them. They know of it. What we paid Gale to do in terms of the engineering study was to do their best without actually boring in and getting underneath. So once we tear in and get the design built, we'll know better the condition of the roadway underneath, which is, I think, when DPW would be better able to inform us as to what their recommendations would be. They did theirs based on the surface level needs of a cracking and deteriorating road surface.
So they have a system for identifying the different needs at different times in the life
Yes.
cycle of the roadway. A mill and overlay is considerably less expensive than
Right.
tearing everything up, doing a whole
Correct.
underlayment,
Correct.
and reconstructing.
Yes.
They have a lot of experience, and I would suggest.
Yeah,
that maybe
we
they would be-
definitely will. That would be the next phase of this once we got to the design work.
So it seems to me that you would do that before you ask for the $2 million to know whether the $2 million is within reason. What if they came back and said, this is a $750,000 job? You're talking about a mile of mill and overlay. I don't know.
Well, we relied on the, yeah.
Something other than asking for the $2 million before you've done the.
Well, so we just did an
$1.2 million,
extensive
$2.5 million.
design with the engineering firm to do the best of our ability to get that professional guidance. That doesn't mean we will certainly connect with DPW. We did our best homework to make sure that we had an informed number to bring you.
I'll sort of give my 2 cents here. I'm probably lucky that the 17-year-old vote didn't go into effect. I'm against this because, first of all, I think the parking could pay for itself if you charged a fee for the spaces.
So we do charge a parking fee. It's currently $300, so there will be additional revenue.
For the 700, and I thought I saw something like 728,000. If you charged for all 104, it'd be a little over $320, and you would be able to pay for it doing that, the interest on it. I don't think the road is any worse than an awful lot of other roads in the town of Concord, and we don't go and pave them over, particularly at a time when we have so many other demands. So I'm not in favor of this. I think that it's one of those things that would be very nice to have, but it's not essential. And I know that there's the expression that necessity is the mother of invention. I'd be afraid of robbing the high school students of the necessity to be inventive.
Yeah.
I understand that they've come up with an app.
They have, yeah. There's
and-
nothing but inventive, so let's be sure we're crediting the kids
That's
for
right.
all
So
the work they're already doing.
I want to encourage
Yes.
them to keep being inventive and not come to the town for funding for, what is essentially an issue that they have to deal with. That's the way I look at it. So there are other options. We publicly provide the school bus service. I understand it's not ideal for everybody, but the life isn't ideal for an awful lot of people. So I'm against this, but,
Laurie, have you, I would be helped in trying to figure out what to do here if our own DPW said, fix the road, or no, it doesn't need to be fixed. I mean,
Understood.
they do.
We will connect with them right
I
away.
would really like
Sure.
to hear from
Sure,
Rich or
certainly.
somebody that, yep, you really got to
Yep.
do this, especially this year when you're coming with a feasibility one.
He was in the early discussions as we met with Gail. He was at least a couple of meetings when we
asking
talked
for
about
his,
that. So.
Detailed opinion of how you would do it, but if it was his road, would it be
Sure.
on his schedule to get done? Or would
Understood.
it be something we could put off for 2 years? I don't know.
Yeah, no, we
That
will.
would be helpful to me.
We'll
and I'd-
pose that
I'd
question right
ask that
away.
We just simply wait
that's
and
fine.
get that
Sure,
input.
happy.
First.
I think that, everybody happy to defer on
Oh, I
this,
think
but
we have somebody from the DPW
Then-
committee.
please come forward. Thank you for,
Former, sorry.
Nick, yeah.
And to your questions about parking and all, we've been working with Dr. Hunter.
Wait, You need to identify
I'm
yourself.
sorry, Nick.
Yeah.
Virginia Road. I'm currently the chair of the Climate Action Advisory Board, and I was on Public Works Commission for 7 years, so I know a little bit about that too. I'm very concerned about the whole issue about transportation in town and mobility and parking only attracts more driving, so I've had that concern. The answer to that particular issue, I don't personally think, is holding this project hostage till the town solves it. I think it's dealing with the town's ability to plan for its transportation needs so that we have a better holistic solution to transportation that takes into account the money we're spending on school buses and everything else and tries to find a solution. Now, we've been working with the school committee to try to find a way to work this issue. And we've made a suggestion. The Climate Action Advisory Board is going to discuss this at a meeting on March 27th, so you might want to wait until then before making any decisions. But we've suggested that perhaps something that could be done to make a commitment to actually do a program that would create some carbon offsets that would offset the driving that would happen. People who would be using such a parking lot would be a practical way out of this. And so we would like to, we're suggesting a commitment, a written commitment to do that. The manner doesn't have to be defined at this point. So if we could hold off, we'll know more in a couple of weeks.
thank you very much.
you.
But we're all in agreement to defer for at least until April 1st and hopefully get
We will
more feedback.
reach out
Thank
right
you.
out to Rich.
Our next item is Article 18, a general bylaw amendment, sustainable growth rate. My understanding is that the Finance Committee has decided not to move on this article. Is that correct, Mr. Finance Chair?
I'm sorry, I was listening
I was distracted to Finance Committee Chair.
The general bylaw, Article 18, sustainable growth rate, the Finance Committee has decided not to move on that.
That is correct.
Now, I don't know, I gather that that can still or could still be moved by the floor. So I don't know whether it makes sense for us, to
I don't
take a
think so.
position. Okay, just be
If
happy
it gets
to.
moved, it gets moved, and the finance committee can explain why they decided not to move the article. So,
But we don't need to take a position on it tonight. Right.
Then we move to Article 23, which is to appropriate funds for the affordable housing development, $500,000 from free cash.
Tom, my understanding was that the finance committee, maybe Mr. Tarpey can just nod if I have it right, didn't vote to support the use of free cash on this. Is that correct?
Mike, I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. This is the Article 23, affordable housing development, the use of free cash. And my question was, I understood, I was away, but understood that the Finance Committee voted not to support the use of this. Is that correct? So I would like to postpone making a decision here until I have a chance to talk to Tom or some of the other Finance Committee members to understand
Okay.
what their rationale is, if that'd be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
absolutely.
Everybody comfortable with
Yep,
that?
yep.
FinCom report for the recommendations
deadline's tomorrow to go to the publisher, so any positions you don't take won't be included in the
Right.
report.
That's okay.
Yeah.
You can announce it at town
Thank
meeting.
you,
Yeah,
though,
we can
for
just put that
reminding
action will
us
be
of
taken
that.
if any, will be taken at town meeting.
Yeah. Next article is Article 24, which is the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund, voting to authorize the creation of it as a mechanism for holding funds. Yes, please.
I just want to note, this is another article that I had brief...
We all know who you are, but probably for the TV audience.
Thank you. Carmen Reese, Town Moderator. This is another one that I had a conversation about Town Council with. So you have another... Can you hear me now?
Nope,
No,
not that one. Try that.
bring it just really close to your,
Can you hear me now?
No.
other one.
The other
the
one,
other one.
yeah.
Left one works. This one works? Okay. All right. We're doing better now. So this Article 24 is another article that I had a conversation with Town Council about on the question of what your motion should say. The issue is that the statute under which you would be the terms that you would accept to create a municipal affording housing trust fund, all the powers under that statute overlap completely with CHDC. And it's clear that the intent of the Select Board here would be just to create this committee to hold and manage money and pay it out at the direction of, I assume, the Select Board. You can move this article as it's printed in the warrant, because later on you will have bylaws that you'll bring to town meeting on exactly what this committee can do and so forth. And also, you won't actually have this trust, even when if town meeting votes in favor of this article, you won't actually have this trust until you draft the trust document. And in the trust document, you can define exactly what the powers are.
And that will need to go back to town meeting.
You'll need to go back to town meeting, not for the trust document,
No.
because this vote will authorize you to do the trust document. The bylaws,
Bylaws, what I
you
meant
have
to
to come
say,
back for. So I guess my thought is you just need to be clear about what you want to do with this, and if you don't want to create an entity that overlaps with CHDC, then you just need to make that, you don't have to do it in a motion, but you need to make it
In the
clear to
statement that we
town
made,
meeting,
yeah.
yes,
Okay.
that that's your intent, and that in the trust document, they're only going to manage and hold money, and you'll be back with bylaws that make clear what the role of the committee is.
Thank you, Carmen.
That's helpful.
With that additional explanation, I'd move affirmative action on Article 23.
24.
I'm sorry, 24. Can't read my own.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Now move to Article 25, which is the authorizing special legislation for real estate transfer tax for affordable housing.
I move affirmative action on Article 25.
I have a few comments I would make. This was an article that was a lot of discussion at the hearing regarding the, in essence, the fairness. It's a new revenue stream, a proposed tax. This is taken from the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, where they're saying that the establishing a trust fund community-wide responsibility should be paid for by the entire community. Proposed tax scheme is inequitable and discriminatory, would single out a small segment of the population, specifically home buyers and sellers, to pay for a community-wide need and responsibility. It would subvert the voter approval process inherent in the Proposition 2.5 override. And it's important to remember that unlike a home purchase, which can be financed, payment of a sales tax cannot be financed. Such a tax would cost thousands of dollars due at closing from the buyer or taken from the seller's proceeds. This transfer tax could be viewed as a municipal equity stripping of the value of one's home. Homeowners attempting to avoid foreclosure or selling their home for less than the outstanding mortgage will face new burdens just to sell their home. For those with little or no equity in their home, these transfer taxes could force the sellers to sell short or else, in some reasons, face foreclosure. The real estate market's highly sensitive to economic downturns. The tax would provide an unstable source of revenue for a current and ongoing community need. The tax is exclusionary because it would in effect create an additional barrier to entry. It would establish an entrance and exit fee for each community that adopts it. In other words, Concord adopts it, but other towns nearby don't. It puts an added burden and on the people who want to come to Concord. They're going to be paying this additional amount. Affordable housing, we do need to raise funds. I'm all in favor of, in fact, the free cash, because that is coming from everybody. And I'm all in favor of the building permit fee surcharge, because that's a voluntary decision once people have moved into their home. I have some difficulties with this one. So.
I get it. I understand. Well, this is related, part of the thing that you read is related to the issue about free cash, because in fact it was, I think, our intent when we did this to spread the burden and include free cash as a contribution all of the citizens were making. If I'm remembering correctly, Todd's committee recommended free cash sort of as a start, but did not recommend it as an ongoing phenomenon. But for us, I think when we talked about it, while we didn't make any decision, this is certainly a single year, but the intent was to try to ensure that the entire citizenry was also contributing to it. So,
and it would be a year-by-year decision of the town whether...
Because we would have to look at our free cash position and understand whether we were in the guidelines or not. Right. Yeah. But to the extent we could do it, it was a way for all of the citizens in town to contribute to something that we believe is a town goal.
Correct.
Right.
So the other parts of your, that you read, I understand that correct as well, but the notion that it was unequitable and not spread was directly related to the free cash article.
Yes, please.
Did you talk to council again?
Well, I just, this was the earlier question that we discussed in response to Linda's question about what happens with this article if there's an affirmative vote on it. So I would just urge the select board to decide how you're going to move this article before you decide what your recommendation on it is. So are you going to move it so that it comes back to town meeting or so that it goes to the polls? That was my only suggestion. And the same will be true of the next article, that you just have to decide how you're going to move that.
I think that because of the nature of it, similar to the tax relief article that we did for seniors, it's so important that at least we haven't discussed it. So, but my position would be we would want to bring this back to the town for a subsequent vote if it was approved by the legislature. Whether or not it needs a town meeting vote and a vote at the polls, I don't know. But I would want to see affirmative action after the legislatures has acted in their infinite wisdom.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that. But I'm wondering whether, based on what you were reading from the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, if we could have Todd Benjamin, if he's able, to comment, since he's somewhat of an expert, I think, in this real estate transfer field, to be able to talk to that question of inequity and the cost of entry or barrier to entry into Concord's home ownership policies.
Specifically with Section 2, Roman numeral I, where it exempts purchases by first-time buyers.
Well, so that's what I was partially asking for clarification, because hope you don't mind being put on the hot seat there. I saw you in the audience.
Been there
tonight.
before.
You may remember February 26th. So Todd Benjamin, Chair of the Affordable Housing Funding Committee, Sudbury Road. So your question was about the Greater Boston Real Estate Board and some of the comments that they have.
The general issues that they raise.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the one thing, and I saw this document as well, I think the one thing to keep in mind is that this document is a standard document. It's not specific to what we're doing here in Concord. This is a kind of standard rebuttal from the statewide lobbying organization. Sorry. So I think that's one thing. Another thing that I think stands out about this article, or about some of the comments they mention here, is the unstableness of the revenue stream. I wish I could find a revenue stream that was stable, and any revenue stream is unstable. So I think some of the information that's mentioned here may not be relevant, not just to Concord, but really to any kind of situation in which this kind of discussion arises. Now, I think your particular question was about the equity issue. One of the things, if this was the only thing that we were looking at to raise funds for affordable homes, then I think that could be an issue. But this is not being recommended in a vacuum. This is being recommended in conjunction with other strategies. And when it's raised in that scope, then we all have, as Tom was saying, as Michael was saying, we all have a stake in this. We all have this is part of the community-wide embracing of these goals. So I don't think that equity issue really applies to what we're doing here, because it's not the only thing. So did that answer your question?
Well, I was specifically looking at section 2, because one of the, as you said, one of the generic comments that Tom read, and that I've had echoed to me in comments by fellow citizens in Concord as a concern, would be the impact on first-time home buyers of Article 25.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it as that this is specifically exempting first-time home buyers. So maybe you can comment on that.
Sure. That was our intention, the committee's intention when we drafted the recommendation, is that there would be an exemption. So that's something that we intended, that we're comfortable with, that we would like to see moved forward and be incorporated formally in this.
And it is.
So if the motion that we choose to move tonight includes language that would allow us to come back to town meeting if we are approved by the legislature a year from now, we would have in that interim year time to think about the specific question and address equity as best we can.
Right.
Or maybe we can't. Can we change the language that gets approved by
The
the legislature in a second vote? No, once they approve this language.
No, we can't, but what regularly happens is, if this was being handled by Senator Barrett's office for us, for example, he would call and talk to us about a particular clause or a particular phrase and would say, well, I don't think this will work, what about this? And so much of that is kind of legislative housekeeping, which would go ahead, but if there was substantive change that they made, there was nothing we could do about it, other than if it came to town meeting, decide to reject it.
Or to the flip side, as I'm listening to you, Mike, and to your question, Alice, isn't it the case that if in our deliberations over the next period of time, while the state legislature is expanding its infinite wisdom on this subject, we could also grow the language?
Well, that's the question, whether you can change.
Not really.
No, I'm not saying it's been approved. My point is, one of the reasons we have the fail-safe of bringing it back to town meeting for a second vote is that we don't know what's going to come out of the legislature, right?
Right.
If we had other ideas, if we wanted to see changes, we could discuss that with Senator Barrett and with Tammy Gouveia, with those who are involved in this at the state, and change it there, correct?
My understanding is that changes of what you're speaking could be possible as long as they did not enlarge in the scope of what. So, and what you're referring from, if I understand the tenor of the conversation, it would be a narrowing of the scope. And so, from my understanding, that is possible. But I'm not the expert in that. But that's how it's been represented to me.
Great. Okay. And the moderator is agreeing with that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, what concerned me was there was a representation at the hearing that something like 60% of the residents of Concord who sell their homes buy a smaller home in Concord. So in essence, they are hit twice, as it were. And the provision 1 would not be apply to them. And that I found worrisome.
That's an interesting point, because I do recall that, and that struck me as an interesting number, and I'd like to understand that better, because I think first of all, I'd like to understand where are these smaller homes, since many of them are being torn down and constructed. So where do they exist? I think we'd all like to know that, because we know many people would like to move into them. And then I think the other question is the number was that there were so many multiple moves that the average Concordian moves, I think, was 4 times during their inside of Concord. Thank you, during their tenure here. And I can't speak to that. That seems like an extraordinarily large amount of movement within a town. So I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Thanks, Todd.
Well, I've been in the minority before, so I don't know if we're ready to take a vote on this, or do people want to?
I'm ready.
Want to make the motion, or?
I'd be more than happy to, as soon as I get back to my handy-dandy page. I move affirmative action on Article 25.
With a recommendation that...
With a recommendation that it will come back to the town, at a town meeting vote, and perhaps a general ballot vote.
Following approval by the
Yeah.
legislature.
But that's a perhaps, because I haven't had any chance to really think about, do we need both of them, or...
I second that. Oh, yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. So, authorize special legislation building permit fee surcharge for affordable housing.
I move affirmative action on Article 26.
I second it.
All those in, I know this would be the same, yes.
Same contingency.
Come back for town meeting vote and perhaps town-wide vote.
Do it the same with this one?
Yeah, but just coming back just to town meeting.
Yeah, and I would add the same amendment to this as the previous one, that it would come back to town meeting for a vote, and perhaps
Town-wide vote.
a town-wide vote.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we
This I
have,
would point out, Charles, this was the essence of the proposal he brought to town meeting a couple of years ago.
we are now ready to move to Article 29, which is the zoning article amendment for formula business.
Shall I go first?
You should.
So I'm opposed to this article. I understand fully the intent. The intent is to help preserve town character. I get it, 100%. Absolutely worthwhile goal. Always number one on the hit parade when the town is surveyed. I don't think it will do that. The kind of formula businesses that would gross us out are not businesses that are going to come to the town center anyway. There's not the square footage here. There's not the foot traffic. There's not the kind of revenue generation that can support that kind of large-scale kind of business that would be out of character with the town. We have formula businesses in the downtown area now, most recently Cafe Nero, is most recent one, but Sarah Campbell's is a formula business. I think the town, in ensuring that these companies, when they come in here, adhere to the zoning, the historical district issues associated with the downtown, can help make sure and preserve that when businesses like that come in here, they look like they belong in the town. You have to, I think, also understand that retail is dramatically changing. The other thing that could adversely affect the town character with respect to the way it looks is you will all, I think, remember a 2-year period where the toy store sat vacant and was a real eyesore and made the downtown area look not quite as cool as it should look. I think that with retail changing, it's becoming a much more competitive. Margins are getting very, very small. It may be the case that some of these chains that can fit in, that can behave the way and look the way that would stay in character with town character would be advantageous to the town. And so I don't see why we would run the risk of affecting our downtown character by having empty storefronts where people can't compete when we have a strong town presence and ensuring that stores that come in here really look like they belong in town. And if we think of the other stores in town that aren't really, I don't think they qualify under the definition of it, but Camilla's, I don't know how many stores Camilla's have, but they have a large number of stores. And Fiorella's, a new Italian restaurant over there, I don't think they have as many, but I think they have 3 or so stores. They're all taking advantage of some economies to be able to lower the cost to be able to come in. What we need to do is not have a formula business bylaw. What we need to do is invest in figuring out how to better market our downtown, how to capture the tourists that come to this town every year. 1 million tourists come to the national park here in town, and I have no idea how many come downtown and shop, but I bet you not much, because they all come, a lot of them anyway, come in buses, and they come in, they go look at the North Bridge and enjoy that experience, and then go down to the other visitor center, whatever they do, and leave town. So if we really want to make sure our town character is vibrant, is able to compete, is providing the services that we want in town, we should make an investment in, I don't want to call it economic development, but tourism and ensuring the viability of our downtown, and not foreclose some business that could come into this town simply because it's a formula that could fit right in and do a good job and serve the needs of the citizens of town. So I'm not in favor of this article.
Mike, can I ask you a question? Your thoughts on...
It's easy. I'm sick, remember.
I think part of what was behind the proposing of a formula business is to make sure that our town doesn't become a downtown of banks and real estate agents and, things that are service-oriented rather than commodity or product-oriented. And I think that may have been what was influencing the decision, which I think is a noble investment in what our downtown looks like. So what's your thought about that part of the reasoning for formula business? The other thing I've heard from the planning board is that this right now encompasses just a 2-block or 3-block area of downtown Concord, and formula businesses can be, there are other spaces, other places in town just outside the district, down by the depot, or somewhere else in town, where a formula business might fit in. And so it's not precluding the,
I understand what it's doing, and
So
that's
just
the
wanted to
part
get
of
your
the
sense.
town that it should be paying attention to, is that, the part of Main Street and the part of Thoreau Street, Walden Street.
Yeah, Walnut Street.
Yeah, those are,
Walnut
well,
Street.
if you foreclose businesses, you're foreclosing opportunities. For example, a Cafe Nero. All right? Retail is changing, and the economics of retail are changing, and it is, the margins on certain kinds of business like real estate and banking are just very different than the margins on, clothing stores or bookstores and things like that. That's a reality we can't escape by simply doing some kind of bylaw. We just need to be vigilant in trying to work harder to get businesses into this town that can provide the needs of our citizens and can fit in. That's why I think our best approach to this in improving town character is investing resources in trying to have staff of some kind that was really devoted to recruiting businesses and marketing our town to not just tourists, but the surrounding towns as well. This is a real pleasure to come down here in an afternoon on a weekend and walk a couple of blocks and have something to eat at Helen's or Main Street Cab, wherever you want to eat and shop, and go to the bookstore and the cheese shop. And so I think we need to spend the resources to try to positively impact, rather than put signs up that say, you're not welcome here.
And I think, in fact, the 2020 budget has built in some additional resources to do just what you're talking about in terms of the investment, from capturing the tourists, working more the cultural districts more closely, working with the nonprofits to try to capture business for them, as well as pull their clientele into the
The
town.
new parking on Kai's Road has places for 2 buses.
I do think there's not unanimity about this particular issue among the business community itself. I'm concerned, in addition to the long-range plan talking about multiple ways that we can encourage vitality in the business district, I'm concerned about, and also recognizing the changing retail environment and so forth, I'm concerned that, an economic downturn or redirect could leave us again with some empty spaces and for way too long. And I don't see how that's helping the business district. So, yeah.
We also have regulations regarding historic and other regulations that I think, in my mind, kind of take care of this. I view this as kind of a solution looking for a problem, and I don't really see what we're protecting in this. I think we already have the protections.
I just want us to take affirmative, I don't mean on this article, but I want us to take affirmative action to work to make our retail, not just here, but over on the depot and in West Concord, to be much more affirmative about taking advantage of what Concord has to offer. This is a terrific.
Or the Bruce Friedman Rail Trail, when that comes on, and now there's an awful lot
I think we can make a huge impact in a positive sort of way, as opposed to putting up signs that say, well, I'm sorry, you got 10 stores or 12, I forget what the number is. You can't play here.
Yeah, and there are other planning elements at play, including the bridge across the Assabet into West Concord to foster more business activity there. So, it's a multiple strategy approach, but I hate to see us block.
What are people's thoughts?
Well, the one voice that I've heard consistently, and I certainly heard it in West Concord when the formula business bylaw was put into place there, was a concern that exactly the kind of economies of scale that a retail operation that has a parent can afford, i.e. the real estate, the kind of real estate fees that they can afford in a town like Concord, that an independent store might have a harder time maintaining, has been a concern. And one of the things we've seen in West Concord, I'm not going to attribute it to the formula business bylaw, but we have a wealth of independent businesses in West Concord, and I think we're very proud of it. When you just described the vibrancy that we all want to see in Concord Center, you described the cheese shop and the bookstore. These are all independent businesses. They are Concord specials.
And if we want to see that continue, then we've got to really invest in trying to drive traffic to the town and more effectively recruit kind of businesses like that. That's the way we can help. Why aren't we publicizing shopping in downtown? Why aren't we working with the National Park to get tourists into town here after they've gone to the North Bridge, to have lunch or do a little shopping, I don't know, whatever. It's an affirmative approach to vitality as opposed to a negative, from my view anyway, a negative approach, which I think does nothing to, in the long run, help small businesses or those that are chain businesses.
People ready to, you want to make a motion?
I suppose so. I recommend no action on Article 29.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that one.
The second, okay. All in favor of no action on Article 29?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody? Okay.
I vote for affirmative action.
So, for affirmative, so 4-1 for, okay. Articles, the last ones, Articles 38 through 45 are the enterprise zone expenditures. There was a very extensive public hearing on that. I don't know whether we need to go one by one or whether we are comfortable voting as a unit. I believe the Finance Committee voted as a group and in favor, and unless somebody has an objection to that, I would propose that that might be the way to go.
As far as me, I vote affirmative action on Articles 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, and 45.
And 38 as well.
And 38 as well.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we've made progress in that regard, and we are now ready for item 8, discuss the library construction project. We have, I believe, I see at least 2 here, so I guess.
Andrew is pointing out we might have been just a little too quick to act.
Oh, yeah, and which, the items, because
What do we?
Yes, I
we
think
miss
we have to
something?
go back. Let's see what we can do. 38
Okay,
does,
some have a
39 does not,
specific amount.
40 does not, 41 does not, 42 does not,
at 43
43.
has 4 billion,
43, does it have an amount?
4 billion and
Million.
4 billion?
million, yes.
That's a number I
Doing
haven't heard in
Washington
Concord.
talk.
And 44. All right, so
600,000.
we can leave, yeah, 38 does. So we'll go back and move affirmative action on Article 38 in the amount of $452,000.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
And then we
So-
will go to Article 43. I recommend affirmative action, Article 43 in the amount of $4 million.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. And then on the Article 44, I recommend affirmative action on Article 44 in the amount of $600,000.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
And then I think we're okay.
Thank you, Andrew, for catching that. And we located the library trustees. Donna, you,
Don't we need a number for 45?
Say what?
Don't we need a
45.
number for 45?
That's 18, 118.
Or
that doesn't have a,
in the amount of 2.37?
oh, okay.
It does.
So 2,379,000,
Affirmative action
45, I read that. It
in the
says
amount of
45, yeah.
in the amount of $2,379,905.
second.
All in favor? Aye. Welcome, John.
Thank you. John Boynton, trustee of the library, here alongside Sherry Litwack, who's the president of the Library Corporation, and Jeff Adams, a fellow trustee. Andrew did have some slides that we were going to try to project here. but I've also got hard copies if that proves challenging. In fact, maybe I'll give you the hard copies anyway since I bothered to print them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to make sure I understand the terminology. The library corporation members are all considered trustees, so when it refers to trustees, it's trustees of the library corporation. Is that one entity, basically? Like, are you a trustee?
That means we are essentially the members of the board of the corporation.
Okay,
We are called trustees.
But they are called trustees.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I was told that you wanted to have a discussion about the upcoming library project, which has been kind of percolating for some time in town now. In order to get that conversation started, I thought it would be helpful to put a few slides together. The chairman asked me to do that. So I'm going to share some information tonight. I don't know how long you want to take on this. I'll speed through these slides, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have. This discussion relates to the expansion of the Concord Library, the main branch in the center of town, which is going to be done by the addition of a structure called the Haywood Benjamin House, which we bought in 2013, and which will be connected to the main library through a one-story addition. But let's start at the beginning. If we could go to the next slide, please, Andrew. Oh, look at that. Okay, it's always helpful to explain how the library works. The library was in fact created in 1873 with a gift by a Concordian named Mr. Monroe, William Monroe. And in fact, the library represents the first public-private corporation, the first public-private partnership in town. When Monroe made his gift, he did it in a very creative way. He basically said, I'm going to give the money and build the building. That will be owned by something called the Concord Free Public Library Corporation. But all of the operations will be handled by the town. So everybody who works in the library is a town employee. So the corporation to this day still is the owner of and the caretaker of the building, as well as the special collections, which was a dimension of the library that Monroe specifically planned for. And the town covers all the operating costs. So if you look at the diagram on the slide, you'll see that there are the town, the corporation, and the Friends of the Concord Library, which was formed in the 1970s. The town covers approximately $2.3 million of the operations. The corporation's annual budget is nearly $700,000, and then the Friends kick in another $30,000 to cover the cost of programming. But the important point here is that this is a partnership that has worked very effectively for nearly 150 years, and we're really proud of what this institution has been able to accomplish in town.
Not really just in the town, in the state, and in the country.
I got to say, our little library has become a prominent resource for scholars around the world, and we're really proud of it. Next page, I'll just touch on very briefly. This is a design that was located in the special collections after the trustees purchased the house at 151 Main Street. It actually shows the founder's original vision, and if you look at this, what you see is three structures. The main library is what was actually built in 1873. To the left, he imagined someday there would be another building he imagined would be the lending library, because back in those days, libraries didn't lend books. You came to the library to read them. In the upper right, he imagined an art gallery. And so he always saw this as something that would be way more than books, and he saw it as something that would grow over time. And so where you see the art gallery labeled on his schematic, that is actually the precise location of the Haywood Benjamin House, and that house was there when he did this design. So he imagined at that point in time that someday the library might expand to include that. And he actually included $4,000 in his will, so that that was to provide for the future expansion of the library. His handwritten will, which we have, says that someday this facility will not be big enough to support this community, and you'll have to enlarge it. He said these funds, these $4,000, cannot be touched for at least 50 years. That was in 1877. So that fund has grown to about $272,000 today, and those dollars will find their way into this expansion.
Great story.
For those of you who aren't regulars at the library is an extraordinarily busy place. I won't go through all these numbers, but a couple of headline numbers. We get about 900 people a day coming through the doors of the library. We have over 6,000 children attend programs every year. Over 8,000 adults attend programs every year. Our circulation is nearly 400,000 books. So contrary to what many believe, libraries are not obsolete. In fact, ours is seeing more and more traffic than we've ever seen before. And a very important differentiator for this institution is that everything we do is offered for free. So we do not charge for programs of any kind, whether you're looking to have a program in one of our rooms, attend a program, borrow a book, whatever it may be, it's all offered at no charge to the community.
As long as you return the book on time.
There is a charge if you misbehave, Jane, that's correct.
How would you know that?
A guess. Oh, okay. A barter. Well, there we go.
Thank you, Sherry. So, as I said, the Haywood Benjamin House was purchased in 2013. I won't go into that story, except to say that because of the partnership, before the trustees made the offer to buy it, they consulted extensively with the town manager, with the building commissioner, and others to make sure this is something the town would support. The feedback was positive, and since then there's been a lot of collaboration, not only with the town departments, but also with citizens across town. We've had a huge number of sessions, focus groups, and other kind of ways to gather data on what people would like to see from the library. And that has all informed the design that I'm going to share with you next. This is the design. And so to orient you, across the bottom of the slide, that's Main Street. So Concord Academy would be behind you there. Going diagonally across the upper side is Sudbury Road. So let's see if I got a pointer here, actually. Do I? What's that? No. Okay. It looks like it. So at the left side of the slide, what you see is the main entrance. The white area in the schematic is the areas of the library that will not be touched by this project. We all know and love many of the antique rooms in the library, the rotunda, the reference room, etc. Those will not be touched by this project. If you look to the right side of the schematic, what you see is the parts that will be touched. So the far right, what is labeled as Library House, is actually the Haywood Benjamin House. That will be connected with the main building through the one-story connection that you see there. And so just to hit on a few of the highlights, what we heard from the community is that the children's room is not big enough. We need to facilitate a broader range of activities. And so what you see in yellow is all new space will be constructed. That is a children's library that's 50% bigger than what we have presently. In the upper right of that, you see a room that will be called the activities room. Sometimes, if you have any experience coming into the library today with a small child, you'll find there's often a story hour going on or a puppet show. People find that they feel like they're intruding if they want to come in just to get a book. This will allow all those activities to happen in a segregated area, which will be a great improvement. The librarians are really excited about that. Once that is moved over there, the blue area is called the Forum, and this is really responsive to what we've heard in particular from a lot of seniors in town. We offer a lot of programs, but most of those have to happen at night, and that's because presently there's no large space in the library to have a program. So if we have a larger program with a prominent speaker, for example, we have to have it in the rotunda. We can't have it during the day because it would be so disruptive. So therefore, those programs happen at night. Seniors said to us, is there a way that you can create a space where we can have programs during the day? So that room that's labeled the Forum will be able to handle 140 people, and there'll be programming day and night there. We also expect that during the days when there are not programs going on, that'll be a great place for high school students to come study, because a lot of what we've heard from parents is they want a place where their kids can come that's not the school, that's safe, that's productive, and that's collaborative. And so the way learning happens these days, it's very different than it used to. So that will also serve as a place for high school students. And there's an orange spot above that that says teen space. We have a lot of middle schoolers who take the bus. They don't drive, they do take the bus. And they come to the library after school. And presently we have a small area where those kids tend to hang out. But this space will be a dedicated space just for those middle school age kids. A little more private, glass walls, of course, but it'll be more space, more comfortable, more cozy. They can hang out with their friends. The final two parts I'll point out are the connector, what's called the Commons, is going to be a place where it's kind of like cafe tables, almost a self-service cafe. So we'll have coffee, tea. People will be welcome to come, bring some food, sit down, hang out with a friend, because historically the library was not a place where you came to talk. Going forward, we imagine it will be very much that. So the right side of the library really is kind of the boisterous side, and this is going to be a great facility for people to come and enjoy that kind of exchange. Again, based on a lot of feedback. Finally, the green area in the lower right is going to be a makerspace of sorts. We've heard that there are lots of creative people in Concord who want to be able to come together with groups to learn, to create, to do things together. And so this is going to be a flexible space that will support all range of crafts. When you hear the term makerspace, sometimes people think about kind of big, heavy equipment, et cetera. Ours will not be that kind of a makerspace. We will have a 3D printer. We will have computers. We will have a better place to teach programming and a bunch of things like that we already do. But we're also going to be able to facilitate things like podcasting. We'll have a room that's dedicated for podcasting and video production, which is, again, based on a lot of input we've heard from the community. And we also want to use this as a platform for teaching innovation and entrepreneurship. We think there's a lot of talent in this community around those areas, and there's really no place in the community today where people come together to teach, to share what they know with the next generation. So that's what we want to enable there as well. So this space is going to create all kinds of opportunities to do things that we can't presently do. So in that regard, it's an incredibly exciting expansion. It's really going to position the library for another century of service to this community.
I've got a couple questions. First and foremost, this is exciting. It's a vision for a lot of needs. One of the things that in West Concord that Fowler is often used for, or could be used for if it had different hours, is for those meetings that we are always looking for space. Typically, there are some rooms you can use in the library today. Are there any envisioned? Is that expanding when we think about overflow meetings? There are so many, as we know, boards and committees in this town doing different things, looking for spaces sometimes at night.
The answer is yes. So right now there are 2 rooms that can be signed up by the public in the library. That number is going to increase significantly because we have heard that people need places to meet.
Right.
They just don't exist. So the answer is there'll be several additional rooms will be created. Yes.
And that would take me to the question about hours, because that's going to be critical to the use of the library. Also, hours for its usefulness to teens, to kids who are studying. Mine, I happen to have one that prefers to study at the library than the school or anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And so I always know when the late hours are, because that's where I'll find her. And the third
You're lucky you can find her.
Well, I didn't say that's another conversation. And then the third question I had was in your last comment about the space for podcasting and video. As you know, we've taken Minuteman Media is now an in-house Concord-owned PEG Access opportunity. Have you collaborated with Minuteman to look at being able to use this space?
So I'll answer that one first. We have not yet,
Okay.
But I will tell you that the library director and the trustees are very interested in partnering with the community. So we've had some conversations with the high school, actually, with some other organizations in town about how we can support them. The COA we've had some conversations with. So the answer is there an opportunity to participate with, to collaborate in some way? Absolutely.
Good.
On the second question about operating hours, the town really establishes those hours. Mm-hmm. So I would suggest you speak to your local librarian and ask for expanded hours.
Check with the select board.
Well, I understand
no,
it's everybody's job, but I just...
no, you're right. And by the way...
Sometimes buildings make it easier or harder.
So we are designing the Haywood Benjamin House so that it will be segregatable from the rest of the library. So you will be able to use rooms late night without having, security issues with the main library. So yes, we are designing that into it.
You're gonna.
Can you repeat
you're
that
gonna
whenever
have
she's
to come
asking?
up here if you. John, while she's coming, one of the reasons that we wanted you all to come is that this year, there's going to be two articles that, from the town of a little over $1 million. And I don't think sometimes people appreciate that some of the town's investment goes for energy efficiency and whatever else to keep the operating costs down, since the town is required to pay for the operating costs. So I think it's important for people to understand kind of what the funds are used for and why. So, Sherry, if you...
with the president's leave. This chart shows the planned spending for the project. It's got a $10 million budget in total. $8.5 million of that will go to the construction itself. $1.5 million will go to the endowment to ensure that we have sufficient funds to continue to take care of this long into the future. And so to answer your question, Tom, just overall, we're looking at 88% of the funding coming from private contributions. That is $8.8 million, of which we've raised about $5.6 million so far. So we're making excellent progress in the fundraising. We have also, we met with Chris Whalen about 2 years ago to lay this plan out to him and asked him what he thought an appropriate amount of funding to come from the town might be and what forms that might take. And so based on that, we've arrived at this mix, which is coming in 3 installments. So if you look at those smaller slices, at last year's town meeting, $150,000 was voted for this project, which is specifically going to go to fund more efficient energy systems than we would otherwise have been able to afford. That will reduce the long-term utility cost to the town and the operating cost of the building. The new space will be, as I said, high efficient systems. It'll have kind of all the latest and greatest insulation, et cetera. It will have LED lighting, and so it will be a very efficient space to operate. This year, we do have these 2 articles in town meeting on the warrant that will direct funds. The $550,000 that's in Article 7 will go to cover furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The town is not legally able to give money to a nonprofit organization directly, but it can purchase FF&E that will be accessible and usable by the town. So that's a number we had worked to develop with the town manager. And finally, Article 22 will have $500,000 in CPA funds that will specifically go for 2 broad uses in the Haywood Benjamin House. The first is the restoration of the house. It was built in 1797, so it's very much an historic house. And so part of those funds will be used to ensure that the exterior of the house is properly preserved. And the second portion will go to adapt the interior to ensure that it's fully accessible. So we'll do things like widen doorways and put in ramps and make sure that that new space is accessible. There'll be an elevator put into that building as well. So there'll be no part of this library that is not fully compliant with all the ADA codes.
In mentioning the Haywood house, one of the things that you mentioned is the historic nature of that house. As the liaison to the Historic District Commission, I'm very aware of the projects in town and their concerns or interest in those projects. I want to, how closely are you working with HDC to make sure that they're aware of the designs at every point of change?
Jeff Adams, oh, here he is. It's probably best to address that because we're actually about to appear before them.
Jeff Adams, Farmers Cliff Road. We had a chance to present informally to the HDC a couple of months ago before the plans were fully vetted and developed, and they embraced the approach of connecting the 2 buildings and restoring the Haywood Benjamin House. Right. So we're actually going for our first formal meeting on Thursday night.
I'm sure I'll see you.
The designs. Yeah. So we've had some conversation and look forward to moving forward with more.
Okay, great.
So
Thanks,
John, if put the plan up, can you do that? Looking at the new part of it, what's the footprint of the house compared to? I mean, I know all the pink is new, right?
So pink is new, yellow is new, green is new.
I don't know. You asked about the house. Yeah, if you drop the house footprint on your plan here. What would...
The square footage of the house?
Because of this?
I'm not sure, but we can get back to that.
Well, let me ask it a different way because I don't need you to do that. But my just general looking, is the pink area is new construction, and part of the yellow is new construction. Is that?
Okay, I think I can answer the question. If what you're wondering is how much of the yellow is the existing house versus new construction. The pink is new.
Got it.
If you were to take that line that is the wall that faces Main Street in the pink
Yep.
and drive that straight across, basically everything behind that is new, everything in front of it is existing.
So, original house,
Right, that's the
additions to the house.
More recent modern additions, correct. So we're preserving the original paper.
No, I get that. That's the line there. And then, in that children's area, essentially, part of that is new additions to the old original house. Okay, got it, thanks. Just
Correct,
curious,
yep.
it's not.
I'm also curious, is there visioning for what is now the children's area?
That is where, that will become the forum where the speakers' programs will be held. So basically, where it says the forum, what you see is a bunch of seats and tables. So that'll be configurable in a number of different ways. It'll be able to be set up with seating for 140. When there aren't programs going on, there'll be a retractable wall that can be closed to make two smaller spaces, and we'll configure that with tables and workspaces. And there's actually, in addition, if you look at the right side of that blue area, and again, I'm sorry I don't have a pointer, that's actually a small addition that will be used for storage of the chairs or tables when they're not being used. Flexibility has been, we put a real premium on flexibility here.
What a cool thing it's going to be when it's done, right?
Thank you. So the last slide I had, and then I'm happy to answer any other questions, just talks about the fact that we have been in the kind of the leadership gift phase. As I said, we've raised $5.6 million to date. We are going to be kind of formally announcing the community phase of our fundraising at town meeting. And our dream is that every family in town will feel that they've had a part in making this happen. So the community fundraising will happen, some of it in the spring, but really a lot of it in the fall, associated with a bunch of programmings, groundbreaking, et cetera.
I think I saw somewhere that about 90% of the town utilizes the two libraries, that it's a large amount.
I think the number who actually have library cards is north of 70%. But there are, I'm sure, others who come in who don't have cards.
We wanted to get this update so everybody sort of would have an opportunity, and any concerns about kind of $1 million is not a small amount, but I think we recognize that it's really a cause which is for the benefit of the whole town. So thank you very much.
I'll just also note, thank you, that we've had a number of forums to make sure the community can stay abreast of what we're doing, and so we're having our final forum before our town meeting this Wednesday at 10 a.m. at, where are we? Oh, in the periodical room at the library. So you're all welcome.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Ready public-private partnership update. Kate, is this something that you were going to assist us in, or no? You wasn't.
Moving right along.
I know that Chris was hoping we do have a library P3 committee charge, and I know that there are a number of people here who were on the original public-private partnership committee. The charge, I think, has been provided. Why don't we see whether there's any discussion among the board members, and then if one of the or more of the previous committee would like to make a statement, we're happy to do that. Would anybody like to comment on? Then
I want to hear from Jean.
Yeah.
So this is an update, not a...
No, we have a new committee charge, which would be a short-term public-private partnership coordinated committee, the town library partnership.
Right.
The recommendation, I think in the draft, we were probably going to change it from, to a 5-member committee, 1 member of the select board, the town manager, 1 designee of the library corporation trustees, 1 library committee designee, and 1 citizen.
Okay.
And
So
I think that the concern may be partly what the makeup of the committee would be.
So those were my comments, but I have one other question about this as written. Section E seems to repeat what's in the intro.
Right.
So I'm wondering, do you want to take it out of intro and keep it in section E, or drop
Where does
section
it
E?
belong,
In the purpose, it says the short-term coordinating committee represents a
Yeah.
public body that will meet in the public.
It's
So I
that
think
last
it's,
sentence out of the purpose.
yeah, so it seems to repeat.
I think I'm trying to see if they, I think the only issue that they have on this is the open meeting, public records, and conflict of interest is not included specifically in the purpose. I think that was the other consideration, was just noting that they're required, as any town committee would be.
It says it in public body that will meet in public and will be subject to all relevant open meeting and public records requirements.
This just kind of lays it even a little further, so I think it could be perhaps
Okay.
cleaned up a bit, but that's
Okay.
with my understanding of kind of the distinction.
And I think the other item in that same paragraph is that the name of the committee is not consistent with the name on the front page.
Okay.
So there may be some amendments to the,
That's why it's draft form. But Jean, please, good to see you, and please identify yourself. And
Thank you. Jean Goldsberry, 1832 Main Street in Concord. I am here on behalf of a number of members of the former Public-Private Partnerships Study Committee. We reviewed the draft committee charge and have a few comments that we'd like to make about it. First of all, we really want to thank the Select Board for considering the appointment of such a committee. And we really appreciate your wanting the information to be shared, although most of the decisions about the design of the library expansion have already been made. In addition to questions, we're proposing some additions and modifications to the committee charge that we believe will help make this a more open and effective committee. So question, other than communicating with the public and the select board, are there any other real responsibilities of this committee? And a suggestion in terms of membership. In order to, I know you talked about maybe expanding it to 5 and adding another person, but in order to ensure that there is really adequate public involvement in the committee, we recommend increasing the membership by including 3 additional Concord residents with no relationship to the library, the corporation, or the town. That then provides some balance that's needed to safeguard the public's interest in this project. And we had no concerns about the term of office. In terms of the duties and responsibilities, again, some questions. We're wondering what kind of interaction there will be between the committee and the library corporation, which is the private entity. Town funds would be used to pay for some of the library expansion and for operational expenses year after year. What role will the committee have in monitoring these expenses, which will be assigned to the town's operating budget in terms of the utilities, in terms of staffing? With this much more space, they're going to need a number of additional staff. And will this committee have any actual oversight responsibility, or is it meant to be just a sort of a communication feed? So those were our thoughts, our comments, our questions about this.
Do you have recommendations about what role the committee, having been on the P3 study committee and having created the set of recommendations, are there specific things, I hear the questions being asked, what would be your recommendations for this?
Well, I would say it's really not going to be a coordinating committee because, again, most of the decisions have already been made. It certainly could be an oversight committee, a monitoring committee. I think that we would really we really are concerned about the ongoing year after year additional expenses to the town. If, for example, just a guess at a number, if there were 5 additional staff that needed to be added, that would add at a minimum $250,000 year after year to the town's budget. So, there are concerns about the long-term ongoing part of this, and certainly at least during this 2-year duration, the committee could certainly have some input into how that happens. And maybe if the library is being expanded to add that much, maybe that's some of that is an expense that could move back to the corporation for some of the ongoing expenses.
So what I'm hearing is that the difference in the way this is written is seems like a more time-limited charge with a report to be submitted to the select board. And what I'm hearing is that the different concepts, one that says there's a longer-term view to be taken in a public-private partnership than what's identified in a 1-year or 2-year committee charge. And I think I respect that opinion.
Do you see an overlap between the town's library committee and this, and the extending the charge of the library P3?
Well, certainly there's the idea of having someone from the library committee sit on this committee. My understanding of the library committee's charge, and I may be uninformed about it, but is that it has to do mostly with the collections and the events and so forth that happen at the library and not so much the operational end of things.
Please, sure. Tim. We'll have to get you a different seat next time.
I just wanted to clarify the library groups because I think that would be helpful. So there's the Library Corporation, which we understand is the partner with the town in the public-private partnership. The Library Committee is actually the town committee that is responsible for policy, the long-range plan. We obviously work very closely with them on this design because this design is driven by the long-range plan. And then there's the Friends of the Library, Jean, and I think that's who you were talking about. The Friends of the Library they're the ones that have the book sales and raise the money that mostly goes to programs, museum passes, and that kind of thing. But the Library Committee is very much involved in the policy and the future plans of the library.
Which is why I saw perhaps an overlap in that space.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else have a?
I have a.
Yeah.
You talked about a potential concern, and that is if the library is expanding, which we saw a presentation, down the road it might be more staff. And given the sharing responsibilities we have, that places an undue burden on the town. I get it.
Yes.
So the way I would frame it in terms of what I would like to see this committee do is we have a partnership. It's well articulated. There's an agreement. As this partnership committee looks at that partnership, how do you view it? are there issues associated with the partnership? Are there things that we should, I mean, the partnership is an old one.
Sure, yes.
And that's two accounts. Old is good, we've been doing it a long time. On the other hand, it's old, and maybe some of it needs to be updated. So I think the committee like yours might be able to look at the partnership between the town and the library, and as you've articulated, the concern about future budget increases based on expansion, are there other? I don't know. I don't have any in my mind. I have no issue here. But if the committee took a look at the partnership and came back to both us and the corporation and said, well, here's 2 or 3 things that I think, they are working, but in the future they might be a problem. You guys might think about redoing it a little bit. So that's the kind of thing I would think a partnership committee would do, would be to look at the partnership and try to help us anticipate and understand issues that our partnership might have going forward so we can deal with them without them becoming a big problem.
Yes, I think that would be an excellent role for this committee.
I do think, though, we're currently, I know Chris is in the process of negotiating or working with the corporation to redo the, before he leaves. And I'm not sure whether this committee is going to be kind of up and running in
They
time.
wouldn't need to do it then.
new
I mean,
one.
it would
Okay.
just be a matter of what any partnership committee should do, I would think. Would be to have the
Monitor
responsibility to review and look at the partnership agreement. Maybe it needs to be, not the
Monitor
library,
it and
but some other partnership, maybe it'd be tightened up. We don't have a clause that deals with this.
Sure.
So I would think a responsibility of any partnership committee would be to look at the underlying relationship and agreement and give advice to us and our partner as to things that we might think about as causing us potential problems in the long run. Had nothing in particular at all in mind.
Is this something you think maybe we should chew on, let kind of it get modified, changed, and then address it either April 1st?
But I think the comments we heard are really
Well, it was one of the great committees because it disbanded but didn't really disband. You
I
keep
know, it's
together,
like we
and
just-
it's a great group, and your input is extremely helpful. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane.
okay, we're now ready. Yes, John.
John Boynton, 72 Chestnut. Just wanted to offer a couple of comments. I was completely caught by surprise by this tonight because, in fact, no one's contacted us as the corporation to explain that this was happening. I've never seen this charge before. None of us has. No one from this committee has ever reached out to us. And so to me, it raises a bunch of questions. I'm wondering, has this been done for other organizations with which the town works? I know the Umbrella, the Concord Children's Center, they get these preferable leases that run decades, so kind of surprised why we're being singled out. And
The P3 committee had a report, I think, in 2017, where they made recommendations regarding certain partnerships that the town was entered into that should be having a town P3 committee. They were partnerships where the expenditures were going to be over $150,000. So this is the first one, I believe, under the new program. I think one of the criticisms the board has had is perhaps we should have had this done at an earlier time, in fact, so that they could have had more communications with the trustees at the framing of this plan. But that was not done, and where we are now.
So I guess I'd like to register that it wasn't done. It feels a little funny to be finding out about it in this forum tonight.
I didn't know you didn't know.
Didn't have any idea. No one has ever reached out to us.
If you had, perhaps, I don't know whether the agenda doesn't always get read as closely as it might, so.
Well, I think we should,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should have reached out. I don't,
Right. Joy?
Hi, Dory Keough, 51 MacArthur
Hi.
Road, and I was member of this committee that will never go away, but really, John is quite correct that this was, and it was unfortunate that they weren't notified indeed, and some of us were surprised when we read it on the supplementary materials item for the agenda tonight, but what the public-private partnership had recommended was exactly as I think you started to say, was that there be ongoing studies of the active partnerships, and quite correctly, the library is the largest and the oldest. And we have been frankly disappointed that nothing after our report, we went through a list of the extant partnerships and threw out some that aren't, but other than that, there hasn't been anything. So as Jean said, we were encouraged that this took place, but we would like to say that, and John mentioned the umbrella, there's a lot of others that really should be being done. Nothing has happened, and so I hope that this will maybe open the door to consideration of having active, a public-private, whatever you want to call it, something, an ongoing one, not one for each organization, but just to keep it going. And also, John, and just in defense of the select board here and the committee, when we made our reports, and during it, they were interim hearings, and certainly the people from the library, Mario was at all of the meetings, and Carrie Cronin, so I think there was a known, they were actively engaged in all of this, so perhaps that just didn't get maybe transferred out. But we are happy, and I hope that you will, though. One of our main things was to expand this committee so it's not all town or library or corporation engaged. And a library committee member is really crossing that line. That's not a member of the community, a separate, free, new, clear look at things. So if we could just leave it at that. But thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you. We are, I think, now ready to move to item long-range plan update. So, sorry to keep you waiting quite this long, but we've had a busy night.
Yeah. And I'm falling apart here. Good evening. Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management. And I don't have all of the updates that town departments have been working on. I have simply the Department of Planning and Land Management. I think Kate Hodges has the Recreation and others, and Rich Rain had submitted his separately. So, no,
And I don't have those.
And that was submitted directly to the town manager. So neither of us have seen that.
Rich, the spreadsheet that you provided, Rich added a few things in there. He was out sick.
Okay.
So it was very minor things. He wasn't able to color code it. But if there's Public Works is in there, that's Rich's addition.
Was color coding a requirement?
No.
Mine is in fact not color coded.
So I provided you with a memo, and as I was reviewing it this evening, there's a couple of errors, so I'll make those corrections as I go forward. But the Planning Department and the Natural Resources Division and Health have not been quiet since we completed the long-range plan in this past summer. I'm not sure the easiest way to go through all of this, but maybe just to say what the goal was and what we're working on. Culture and historic resources, goal number 4 was to enhance regulatory tools to protect and preserve historical character and cultural resources. Historic Districts Commission has begun its outreach efforts and discussions with 2 areas in Concord Center to consider expanding the historic district, and the department is assisting with that with our staff planner. The Historical Commission is evaluating the effectiveness of the demolition delay bylaw and will be considering revisions to streamline and improve that process. Economic vitality goal number 1 was to renew and improve Concord's village centers as vital pedestrian-friendly economic and social hubs to enable community engagement on a wider scale. The Planning Division is on behalf of the Planning Board, is seeking a technical grant to, with our regional planning agency, to study potential for creating a transportation-oriented development, or Chapter 40R, overlay district in the Thoreau Depot area. That would be Crosby Market and the area along Thoreau Street. And the Planning Board is also considering revised zoning for 59 Walden Street. This is a limited business district that has currently had a vacant structure on it for the last 3 years. So we're looking at a visualization exercise from MAPC as the Planning Board looks at reuse of that site. That will take place after town meeting. Economic vitality, goal number 2, build on the enhanced quality of life encapsulated in goal number 1 by supporting strong commercial business success throughout town and attract and retain a constant workforce. A lot of things are going on here. The West Concord Junction Cultural District is using grant funds from the Mass Cultural Council to hire a consultant to conduct surveys and public workshops to better understand the artist and creative business community in West Concord and identify ways to support and enhance that group. The Planning Division continues to participate in Crosstown Connect Transportation Management Association. We've just learned that Emerson Hospital has agreed to join, and we are encouraging Newbury Court, New England Deaconess, to also join us. Right. So I think that's helping us move forward very slowly, but gradually and in the right direction. Planning Division will be seeking consultant assistance in reviewing all of our transportation issues to identify a framework for addressing the issue in a more coordinated and systematic manner. There are a lot of moving parts when we talk about transportation. Nick Pappas, who spoke earlier, has been very helpful and wants to assist in framing that issue so that we're building from the ground up and doing things that are beneficial for the next stage of our transportation issues. And we've also had some outreach with Minuteman National Historical Park, and we've submitted a grant proposal to identify, for federal funding to look at transit routes, feasibility to pick up people at the train station and deliver them to the park, to Great Meadows, and to the historic areas, historic districts in Concord Center, and then back to the train station, so to reduce the number of cars on local roads. Housing goals. Goal number 1 was to develop realistic, achievable targets for preserving or creating housing of all types. And goal number 2 was to develop additional self-sustaining funding mechanisms to support achieving these housing targets. So earlier you spoke about the Affordable Housing Funding Committee. They've identified some potential sources of funds. I've been working with the Regional Housing Services Office to provide assistance to that group and to support and help identify how we might use those funds in various opportunities. The Regional Housing Services Office and Planning Division have been coordinating meetings with our housing groups to improve communication and develop support for various initiatives, including the potential for the affordable unit on the Giroux land, potential acquisition of property for Habitat for Humanity, and discussions of additional dwelling units on Concord Housing Authority property. And then recently learned that the state has passed legislation to collect tax revenues from Airbnb properties, which the town could adopt that provision, and a portion of those funds must be dedicated to affordable housing initiatives.
So
another source of funding, yes. Housing goal number 5 had to do with encouraging renovation of existing single-family homes in all zoning districts and opportunities to create accessory dwelling units. And the Planning Board, with support from the Planning Division, is undertaking a comprehensive review of its zoning options and opportunities to expand affordable and workforce housing opportunities. They're considering 2-family and additional dwelling units and promoting construction of smaller units of housing. Then on to housing goal number 6 was identify regulatory tools and tax incentives to encourage developers to build housing the town needs and wants, especially denser housing near town centers. The Planning Division, again, on behalf of the Planning Board, is seeking that technical grant to look at transportation-oriented development. Transportation and mobility, to a goal to establish a central transportation planning function within town government to reduce motor vehicle dependence and traffic volumes. We did seek a transportation planner in this year's budget cycle. Unfortunately, the funds were not available, but we will continue to request that. In the meantime, we do have a small source of funds to seek a consultant to assist with that review of the transportation issues and create that framework to get started. We're working on a number of initiatives in different directions, and I think it will be really important to have a framework for dealing with each of those. Transportation mobility goal number 2, create safe, cost-effective walking and bicycling connections between key pedestrian and bicycle paths and trails to improve mobility around Concord. Town meeting of 2019 approved $60,000 for a trail study. Actually, I think it was 2018. DPLM will take the lead to bring a consultant in to assist public outreach for input and prioritization of path improvements. Planning Division will continue to monitor and assist efforts to complete the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, with construction of the bridge over Route 2 expected to start either in the fall of 2019 or the spring of 2020. Planning Division has also been approached to consider extending the Minuteman bike path from the Bedfordtown line. So that we're beginning conversations about getting that into the process. And one that's missing is the Assabet River pedestrian bridge. We've completed the survey for that work, and we have been approached by an architect who would like to do some design. So we're going to have a workshop in the summer to look at design of that bridge to make sure that it is a beautiful bridge connecting the Baker Ave Industrial Park area with West Concord commercial area. Transportation mobility goal number 5, developing an approach to parking that balances principles of sustainability with the town's economic goals. Planning Division, that has to do with that national park grant that we will learn about hopefully in the fall. Funding is available as a match. The town has to come up with, I believe, a small amount of 20% or 10% of the grant we're seeking is about $180,000. There's $20,000 in the budget for that match. Open space, natural resources, goal number 2, to protect rivers, wetlands, ponds, vernal pools, etc. National Resources Division, it continues to seek funds from Community Preservation Committee to move forward on dredging a portion of Warner's Pond to enhance the ecology and recreational use of that resource. And we will be getting funds, if approved at this year's town meeting, to begin the permitting for that project, with additional monies sought in years to come. Open space goals number 3, ensure that all Concord residents understand the value of conservation lands and natural resources. Natural Resources will be adding community-wide mustard pole this year. It's an initiative that people have been asking for, and that will follow the Concord cleanup event in the spring. Open space and natural resources goal number 4, provide responsible management of conservation lands, including protection, preservation, and restoration. The Natural Resources Division did request funding for a land manager position to assist in managing town conservation lands. However, again, the budget cycle did not allow for it this year, but we hope and will continue to seek that position for in the future. Open space natural resources goal number 9, enhance the connections and access to bike paths and walking trails. Again, the trail study, we will be working forward with that, and the Planning Division has begun discussions with Natural Resources to consider a master plan of Harrington Park and the Wheeler Harrington House that would include potential reuse of the Ball Benson House and barn. So that sounds like a really exciting project, and we hope to move forward with that either this spring, summer, or fall. And public facilities infrastructure goal number 2, evaluate cost effectiveness of new or complete redevelopment of town buildings. We've been in, this has to do with the 229 Main Street property. And the Planning Division recently participated in a conversation with the EPA consultant to consider reuse of that property, and we're hoping to have see if a committee can be appointed after a town meeting, with a meeting in May and a public forum in June where we seek all the ideas, the universe of ideas for redevelopment of that site, so that the next step in designing the mitigation of that site and restoration of that site can take into consideration all of our potential reuses. Then, what I failed to include in my memo had to do with the Health Division and the Board of Health, and it has to do with public facilities and infrastructure goals to implement low carbon considerations. We're in line for a vehicle this year for the Health Division. We are seeking an additional grant to purchase an electric vehicle, and we'll be installing electric charging stations at the Kaiser Road facility. And also, they are working to protect function of lands around drinking water wells. They continue to be updated on their responsibilities, looking at protecting groundwater resources and looking at alternative systems for wastewater treatment, so that, again, they will be protecting groundwater resources. Maintaining regulatory compliance and promoting reduction of impacts on groundwater, updating septic systems when properly installed and maintained should have minimal impact on groundwater quality. And lastly, coordination of services delivered through town, nonprofit, and private organizations. The Health Division works really actively to contract and affiliate with public and private entities to deliver services such as mosquito surveillance and control, beach water testing services, our weights and measures inspections, food inspectional services, tobacco compliance, public health nursing, and public health entities to help with training staff. So, and then, that's all that the planning department, Department of Planning and Land Management is involved in. And we've been working with Recreation on designing the position for a tourism and visitor center manager. Funds, again, from MCC will be used to help fund this year's position, with additional funds provided for some mapping or printing as needed by the visitor center. And I'll turn it over to Kate.
All right, so my updates come from the divisions and departments under my office, which include the facilities, senior services, human services, recreation, which includes BD, sustainability, parks and playgrounds, public information, media technology, visitor services, and PEG. So as far as the cultural and historic resources, the big idea number one is to develop a coordinated cultural and arts. So we have that in progress, as Marcia alluded to, with the hiring of the visitor service and tourism manager. Our chosen candidate is currently undergoing pre-placement exams, and so the name and information is not public yet, but will be, and is really highly qualified, and we're very excited to have that person be joining us hopefully by mid-April. So right in time. Middlesex Bank is vacating the visitor center, and the visitor center is undergoing a full rehab where we're going to redesign, and actually our facilities division is going to be creating an office in the upstairs cupola area of the visitor center. So we're looking to have that be a year-round full-time position where we'll have a presence even in the winter months.
Kate, I'm wondering whether, as time is getting late, it would make sense to maybe defer to the next meeting the rest of the report. And
you mean I have to come back?
We figured I'm just concerned. I know we've got the school committee here in the terms of the review and approve the middle school building committee charge, and I think in fairness to them, I would like to get to that. We've had, it's a long meeting. I always find after 10 o'clock the efficiency sometimes goes down a little bit, and we don't have quite as, we'll put you very early on April 1st.
Nope.
Does that, other people have any problems with that notion, or?
No, that's fine. Kate, it would also be helpful to have this in writing,
Yeah.
And that's probably your intention anyway. Yeah, thank you.
Why don't we then proceed to the middle school building committee charge, which I think we have the written draft on, and I do see that we also had an email from Carlin Reed regarding some suggestions that she had, but I see that the school committee personnel were here, and I don't know if they wanted, have you seen a copy of this? And if you'd like to make a, yeah.
Continuing discussion on number 12.
I didn't see him here.
I would advise that, yes. Yeah, no, I did.
Well, we should
because
also thank all of the town staff that came
Yes.
for this as well, because I
No,
know we
I,
have our facilities manager here
Yeah.
too.
I feel badly. We kept him here long and late.
Yes, I just assume not keep them longer, I guess is the point, and.
What we're asking for him is to come back at another evening after
Yeah.
hours,
Um,
opposed to staying tonight.
Well, I'm happy to plow forward if that's the wish. I just,
I feel like he's been sitting here for the last 3
well,
hours.
well, then why don't we allow him
Okay.
to come forward then, and
Okay.
that's,
So let's jump to 12, and
Jump to
if there's
12,
11
yeah.
piece, we can,
so Kate, do you want to sort of take the lead on 12?
Well, actually,
or-
Ryan Orr, our
Ryan,
facilities
okay.
director, is here.
Come forward then.
Make use of his 3 hour sit. Thank you for waiting so
Yes.
late.
Start with
Yeah,
yes, we all have the,
I don't. Oh, is this it?
facilities assessment.
Okay. Who would like to begin?
Okay. So, Article 27 of 2017's town meeting allocated $250,000 to be expended under the direction of the town manager to conduct a comprehensive municipal facilities needs assessment and a master plan. So, after a detailed RFP was issued, several prospective firms were interviewed, and the town ultimately hired TBA architects in March of 18 to begin the process. The work plan developed by TBA in the town identified 3 key factors for the project's success. The first was to conduct a comprehensive existing facilities analysis where 3D high-definition survey laser scanning was used in many of the municipal buildings in order to identify where all of the building elements, utilities, and amenities lay. The data points were captured in these dimensions, resulting in an accurate documentation of the existing conditions. And this process was actually completed in the early winter and included several municipal facilities, including the townhouse, the entire Kais Road campus, including all 3 buildings, and a complete survey of the grounds, police and fire station on Walden Street, the West Concord Fire Station, Hunt Gym, 55 Church, and the Harvey Wheeler Complex. The second task involved discussions in which each of the building managers and department heads had to assess the most cost-effective designs and enhancement for their existing facilities. The consultants completed these interviews in late February and developed 3 proposal plans for review and comment. We are calling them originally options A, B, and C. The consultant's option A is the least modified and least expensive option, which works to accomplish minor repairs. Option B is renovation and expansion offerings to the existing buildings, which may include the relocation of departments between buildings or between building sites, proposed reconfigurations that would have a more moderate cost to them. And then option C is the most expensive, including major renovations, relocation of entire departments, new construction, acquisition of new buildings, et cetera, et cetera. So this is an example of what, on the right-hand side, of what the Excel spreadsheets that we would be given look like. There's one that exists for every building site. I'm just using the townhouse here as an example. That's what Ryan and I determined was best, as we believe you all are most familiar with this building. So in the townhouse, we can see that the town manager's office suite currently has an existing square footage of about 800 square feet. It tells you in the orange box next to that the industry square footage for 2 executive offices and 1 administrator is 765 square feet. So in terms of conventional office space, we meet the standard. However, the town manager's office, as you well know, has 3 executive offices, the town manager, the deputy town manager, and the facilities director. And we also have 3 administrative staff, 2 full-time and 1 part-time. So in that respect, we do not meet the standard. So proposal A and B were outlined in terms of square footage, and they're also indicated with the green and blue boxes all the way on the right. Option A increases the square footage by 343 square feet, option B by 450, and it's upon us to, as the town officials, to kind of go through that with the consultants and decide what's best and what's not. I'm going to hand it over to Ryan now.
So this is something that would be developed for every single...
And it is. It's just we've only gotten through A and B of each facility.
Okay.
All right. So bringing it down even further, keeping with the same example, townhouse shown here. The example it's up above, and for the rest of you that have the packet. What it shows is NSF, which is net square footage. That's the usable square footage, which happens to be 799 square feet, which is what Kate had just mentioned. And so if we went with proposal A, we'd be increasing up to 1,144 square feet, which was the increase of roughly 340 to 350 square feet, or we go with option B, increasing it to 1,251 square feet, which is an increase of roughly 450 square feet. So, flipping to the next page. After the consulting did the mathematical calculations of what we should have in place, as seen in options A and B, they provided an existing conditions rendering for each facility and joined that with the new A and B options. Here's the existing first floor of the townhouse. So the first floor obviously has the open floor plan in the middle, and kind of everybody's kind of spread out throughout downstairs, and we're not even sure what to do with this. It's a purple room off in the back corner. We really haven't found a use for that yet that makes sense in the current space. I know we've had a lot of complaints with this open floor plan here where people just don't even feel safe. So that's what we have for an existing space. Moving on to the next one is what the architects have come up with as a possible solution. That purple room that we were just talking about, space that we didn't know what to do with, is now going to be a conference room. We'll move all the other office spaces to the outer walls as private spaces, and then closing off the public counter area and securing that, just making a more secure open office space behind it, which is something that has been brought to our attention many times now, that Treasury and accounting would like to see happen. So moving on to the next one. This here is the second floor existing condition. Page. Second floor existing condition. Which behind us is HR. Over to the right over here is the kitchen area. Town manager's is back on the other side over there. So this is just to give you an idea of where we're sitting, so you can kind of reference it. This is option A, which was given to us by the architects, that now where HR was, which was behind you over here, is now going to be personal offices, downsizing the kitchen to just a smaller kitchenette. That would give us more private office space. Also making some changes to the town manager's office. Giving, where was that? But there was a seating area in there.
Yeah, it essentially provides a waiting room. Although,
actually listed that
yeah,
on
we
it.
were just providing these as schematics for you guys to go over. These were the first drafts brought by the consultants, and when we met as individual divisions and departments, there was a lot that was wrong with it. And so you'll see that when a more finalized plan, or at least a later version of the draft comes forward, that A and B will look different than this. But it's kind of giving you an idea that we have, here's what you do if you use the existing space and just move people around a little bit, maybe cut in a door here and there. Here's what you do if you want to spend a fair amount of money, but you don't want to change any of the existing envelope. And here's what you want to do if you want to, take the whole thing down and, money is no object kind of thing, which we all know we don't live in that world, but.
So Kate, I understand, just because tonight's meeting has also earlier had the school committee discussing their initial facilities plan that's led to a feasibility study, and there was a facilities team that was part of this. Who was on the team here?
It's the senior management team, so the 11.
So it's all town staff?
Correct. For right now, yes, for A and B. Actually, do you want to go to the next slide, Ryan? So this is just an example of sort of the option B in another facility. The townhouse is kind of easy because we can't change the existing envelope on the outside. We have to just do things on the inside. So not to spoiler alert, but C for this building includes basically gutting this building completely from basement to attic and reinforcing it in complete steel, and then building 4 levels where there
All floors would be
is 3.
removed, so they would just reconfigure the height of every floor to see if we could put an extra floor in, basically, also including an elevator, I believe.
So to keep the historic shell in there?
Correct,
Yeah, you
but
would
the
never know
inside,
from the
you'd never
outside.
know.
The inside would change.
It would be
completely.
one central elevator in the middle. It's pretty neat to think about, but we are talking millions. Millions.
massive undertaking.
And I don't know what you would do with all of us, while that's happening.
That's a really good question to ask.
So we haven't quite figured out but like here, what you see above is, the existing conditions for DPW are up on the left, and on the right is essentially what they need, and it's the minimum amount of what they need, and that isn't even the forecast of where they need to be in 10 years, and that's adding all of those buildings. So we kind of get into a situation similar to what the school is in, which is, you renovate the existing at X amount of millions, or you find something new. We have a bit of a problem because we don't have this much land in town, so we have this inventory, which we have the next time we go over, I guess, whatever's in the long-range plan. But one of them is that facilities has developed this listing of available lands, both, without a building on them and with a building that could accommodate, what the consultants are saying we need for a municipal building, X amount of square footage kind of thing. So when you look at, can you go to the next one? When you look at C here, so the consideration for the options for C, that is where we get into having citizen input. We come to this board, we come to other boards. That's where we're trying to figure out, we need to ask folks what divisions need to be together, what divisions would like to be together, but it's not critical, what divisions really don't need to be together. So one of the things that we can all pretty much agree on is that we don't necessarily need to have a municipal building that has the DPW operation in it. But it would be really great if we had a municipal office building that had Department of Planning and Land Management in it. And what does that mean for DPW? Is it all right, strategically to not have DPLM right next to DPW. And so the initial part of that is to have that staff level meeting where you're getting input from the directors, and that'll be in the next couple of weeks, and then Ryan and his team, and then bring those Cs, whatever it is that's proposal C, which I think you're likely to see as a DPW garage, a central municipal facility, and new police and fire station, and maybe a retrofitting of West Concord police and fire station, and bringing that forward and saying, okay, all three of these projects are X amount of million. Where do you want to phase that? How do you want to phase that? Do you want to phase that? And where does that fit in with the rest of the town's goals?
So I think the question I was asking earlier, and this is an enormous amount of work, and I appreciate all of it, is the facilities committee on the schools, in part because the schools also involve town children all the time, had a higher public profile from the start than we have done so with this so far. And I just want to make sure that as we go forward with this, the public profile increases so that Concord is not caught surprised, that Concord understands the importance of all of the thoughts that have already gone into this. Why you had the laser, what was the description of
3D
3D
scanning.
3D imaging. I remember those individuals in the rooms. Now I know why.
The Finance Committee has recommended that there be a town committee set up in order to kind of coordinate and work with this,
So municipal-
I guess the question is the timing of that.
Yeah, and I think we're getting to that. But the thing is it's the municipal buildings are very different than the schools. I think that the schools, people in town have much more familiarity with them because they're there for events or they're there to see their children's classroom or attend whatever. We don't have people traipsing necessarily through the lunchroom here and so to get to the existing conditions and to do portions A and B, it really is in the non-public areas. It really is how does staff flow, how does work flow, and getting a consultant to try to understand that. It's a different scenario. So it was a bit by design that we didn't open it up yet, because what we needed to do was paint the picture of this is how Concord operates. Every municipality is different. And so now we're getting into this phase. I think I was asked to come here because I think that the school building project was coming forward, and I think that we just wanted to make sure that everybody remembered that back in 2017, we had dedicated this amount of money to take a look at this. We are nowhere close to being done, and it may be that it decides, we have this great thing. Yes, we need all these things, but this isn't a priority in comparison to the others. But we have to finish the study before anyone will know. There's many forums, and that's built into the contract.
I think the earlier you can get a citizen involvement, the earlier you get people understanding what the needs are. So
it's less about being part of the flow and more about being part of the public process that starts to get heads wrapped around. And really the other piece of it is to appreciate the kind of work that is done every day by all of the town employees that keep all of us happy enough so that we don't even know about it. I mean, that's part of the achievement here is the fact that it all happens so seamlessly that most people in Concord aren't aware of it.
Okay.
I just want to remind us that it was, I think, Jane's first year on the board where she was recommending and spoke quite eloquently about the need for a facilities master plan.
Yep.
Well, you got it. Took you 5 years.
There we go.
Any other questions? Or yes, if you want to, I guess they've taken the mic away, so come up forward.
I think when it doesn't work, it's taken away. Right, thanks.
Hi, Terry Ackerman, 89 Eastbridge Road. Yes, I was at a Finance Committee meeting about 1 or 2 months ago, and they were discussing sending a letter to the Select Board asking for some sort of town and school-wide, what do they call it, Comprehensive Capital Facilities Planning Committee, where the middle school and some of these town projects could all be phased and timed so that voters could afford them best. And I was wondering if you've received that letter
Yes.
and how the board is thinking about responding. Are you thinking about,
That's what tonight's meeting's been.
well, that's what I'm wondering about, because there's a lot of detail in here, and the schools have obviously done a lot of work. And is there going to be one maybe comprehensive committee that can figure out how to time all of this together?
Well, I think that the answer to that is that the school process is kind of ready to go, the town process less so. So my anticipation is that they're not going to be done sort of in a coordinated all together. I just don't see how that is a practical situation or a financially feasible situation.
Oh, I see.
And I think
Okay.
sometimes the finance committee kind of doesn't quite get the
Mhm.
big picture. Not to criticize them, they do
Sure.
a wonderful job, but they don't
Right.
get the full picture.
I guess my impression was that the schools are very far along, but they need to do this feasibility study, and the town needs to finish its feasibility study, so it may be that they're ending up ready to go at the same time.
Not, feasibility studies are not something a town committee does.
Right. But it seems that we need a coordinated capital planning process, in my opinion.
Just to be clear, this will be done by June. So I think what we're voting on is to start a facility or a feasibility on the school end. Ours started in 2017. So that's, they're kind of running concurrent now, but.
Well, I think there's a challenge in front of us. I think it's,
Well, the long-term funding, and
Yeah.
we have a 5-year capital plan. We'll need to look at how that capital planning happens across the town, to look at which of these projects we want to do now, which ones can wait, and look at our phasing of all the work. And I think that's what you're asking for, and I think that's typically what the town does in the development of its capital plan.
Mm-hmm.
Are we ready to move on to the next one item, review and approve middle school building committee charge?
You guys still awake? Thanks for hanging in there.
We're here.
Thank you for staying late.
I think we've received, it's about a 6-page, and as I said, Carolyn Reed had a email to us on Sunday where she made some recommendations. So I don't know what people's thoughts on those. The middle school building committee, the charge is quite similar. I think was taken largely from the Willard School.
Which is obvious in the language in the, which we need to modify.
But I think that the thought is that it's kind of the same,
Right.
process and largely. I don't know whether anybody in the school committee has questions or comments. We'd be happy to.
I'm just going to share things we've been talking about.
Great.
So some things, and I'm really speaking for everyone, I think, having talked with members of the school committee, and Jared and I think in terms of the membership, some feedback that we'd like considered. We'd like to have the director of finance on operations with a vote, so that would be Jared.
Director of Finance?
Jared is
Yeah,
director
okay.
of finance and operations. You're not surprised to hear some hope that there might be 2 school committee members instead of 1. As community members, we'd encourage consideration that at least one of them be a parent in the schools, if not more. And then these are really rough. We're just getting feedback now, since we just got this on Friday afternoon from some professionals in the field, architects and OPMs and things. Consideration, and we don't have all this wordsmithed in terms of what we'd recommend. It's certainly a rough idea of whether the building committee would be charged with assessing the project manager and designer and determine if those contracts might be extended if the full project is approved. Apparently there's precedent in other committee charges that the committee, you remember we talked on how these would be phased at the beginning, and then we'd be at the next juncture, should the whole project go forward. This would give you some latitude as a committee to say, we're really happy with what's happened so far. Could we go forward? So we don't have the language to know exactly how that would be worded, but it has happened in other charges. And then in terms of some of how the construction delivery process might go, and these are things we need to research more. We literally got the email while we were sitting here tonight in terms of some of the options under Mass General Law that the committee would be in charge of spelling out. And then this one you're going to like, I think, this last recommendation, to complete the project on schedule within budget and minimize the expenditure of contingency funds as part of the charge of the building committee. So those are our initial pieces of feedback based on seeing it Friday.
It'd probably be helpful if we got that in writing.
Yes, we will be happy to do that. Yes. Yes. Sure.
Can you hear me from here?
I think better to, just in order to.
Sorry. Only that earlier when we were talking, we mentioned that this stage is the platform for community input. Oh, I don't have to do that. That's okay. Thank you, Terry. Just that be ideally a part of the charge also, to charge the building committee with managing and running a process of community
Public
input and
involvement.
discussion. Exactly,
Yeah.
public involvement.
I
So
think that's
just to
in
make sure
keeping
that
with
that's
Colin's comments.
Yes.
included somewhere. Okay, great. Thank you.
I had a recommendation.
Yes.
Oh, bring back the microphone. Sorry.
And I did get it.
Sorry, thank you. This goes back to my question about whether the committee is actually the building committee or or the public information committee. Let's assume it's going to be a committee that goes for a longer period of time. I thought maybe the first duty, which is not shown here, is to review and form an opinion based on the facility evaluation that you've already done, and make a decision and commitment to which of the proposals to start looking at the schematic designs for. We should know by then whether it's schematic designs for option A, B, or C, but somebody has to make that decision unless that's delivered to the committee. I don't know if it's not stated in here how that would happen, but I would say if it's not stated in this, that's their job number one.
Yeah.
Before we hire an owner, OPM, or move forward. That was my first thought about how to modify this. I'm sure other people have comments as well. But I just want to talk a little bit about the role of the town manager. So the town manager is a member of the committee as it's written, but the town manager also has other responsibilities, so I tried to square how that works.
Well, because this is a committee of the town. I mean, he or she is the...
So I just didn't understand, he would serve, or she would serve as a dual role, town manager, and on this committee. But as this lays out a whole set of individual responsibilities for the town manager separate from the committee, I just want to make sure that's the right construct here. It looks a little odd to me.
I don't remember the town manager being on the Willard School Building Committee at all.
So it's almost like the town manager is staffing this as well as...
So that's the question. It's responsibility number one of the town manager is to engage the town manager throughout the project as needed. Okay? That didn't make sense to me.
I don't think the town manager belongs on this committee at all.
Well, that's the question.
I certainly support Laura's notion of perhaps an additional school committee member, not so much to have two, but if this comes to pass, it will be a relatively long process, terms lapse, things like that.
So consistency would be
I
important.
also support Jared being a member, but I think he should be an ex officio member. I don't think he should be a voting member. We need him on the committee because he's got expertise and he's got information and knowledge, but I don't recall John. Heather, you might remember whether John was on the Willard committee or not. I can't remember.
The Willard committee was a member of the Board of Selectmen, town manager, one member designated school committee, superintendent of schools, school facilities manager, Willard school principal, representative of the finance department / committee, 1 member knowledgeable in the field of sustainable building design operation, and 5 community residents at large.
So that's what we have.
Right.
That was
Just-
like
it
a
was
cut
just
and
a
paste.
cut.
So I would almost argue, thinking about the people who are on this committee, that our finance director also be on the committee, rather than an appointee from the finance committee. I almost think it's inherently governmental to understand the financing of the town
Well,
and
I
to
don't
manage
think a
our debt
finance
service
committee
over the
member
long
can
term.
be on the committee anyway, so,
It just,
yeah, a finance committee member can't be a member of another committee.
Right, exactly.
But they could designate
Yeah, they could
somebody.
designate someone.
Yeah.
In the same way that we,
Yeah,
I mean,
they could designate
Yeah.
somebody,
right,
sure.
one of the,
But I think one of the concerns is to make sure that it's broadly based and not seen as kind of,
I think it's
stacked. from-
particularly important broadly based. I was a finance committee, I don't know what the heck I was called, liaison maybe, I can't remember, to the Willard project. Pat Nelson and Jerry Wedge were the co-chairs of that committee. It was a terrific committee. I mean, it was really very eye-opening for me.
Just on the subject of appointment of finance committee members to the committee, we actually have a prohibition in the charter
Yeah.
on
Right.
finance committee members serving on anything except the finance committee, so they can be liaisons.
They could designate.
Could certainly be
somebody
liaisons, but they can't be voting
Voting
members.
Thank you.
So,
thank you.
one comment I have about this, again, thinking ahead, way ahead in terms of the, let's assume that the major construction has been done on the project. I'd like to see that there's a requirement in the final report that there's a list of unfinished projects not included in the major building construction with estimated costs and a projected timeline for completion, because we've been faced, as we know, with this isn't done and town needs to come up with money, and at least some attempted visibility on that.
So we can try
Oh,
and redraft.
got another,
Yeah,
Nick.
yeah. Yes, and I got yours. I do think somebody from the sustainability makes a great deal of
Right,
sense.
at least in the early phases.
Well, I think throughout. I mean, I
That's
think
that's
that...
fine. Okay, yeah, whatever, just want to make sure.
No, but I think,
No, that does
thank you
say
for
it.
your email and suggestion, because I do think that sort of the coordination, it's important that a large portion of the town wants to have sustainability building. This is one of the biggest projects, at least, that we have on the horizon right now, and
Yeah.
clearly we need that input.
so
And I-
would
And I
we,
think we also did receive correspondence from the League of Women Voters suggesting that under the design phase, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th bullet, talk about fostering an environmental educational discussion of environmental education and sustainable building design, et cetera.
Yeah.
Just to include that, so I don't want to lose that.
No, thank you.
so are we, have we come up with a number that we might want to expand it by, or are we still working through the draft at this
Well,
point?
I'll suggest another type of person who might be useful on the committee, based on being on the Minuteman School Building Committee, having somebody knowledgeable in industrial construction or construction management or project management is an extremely valuable voice at the table to oversee or to work with OPM and to work with the consultants, somebody who has another voice of reality.
Yeah.
That project, by the way, is on budget and on time.
No, despite the building costs going up in other places, so,
Despite the gas strike.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I think we're probably not ready to approve it, but we've done a review.
right.
I think this is really important in the sense that we want to try to get this as right as we can. I'm not even sure we need to, maybe I'm wrong, but need to have it ready for town meeting. We just need to make our intent clear that we're doing this. It's going to have broad-based citizen involvement. Here's a draft, but we're still working on it. I think it's important to get it, all the heads going like this.
It's critical, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think it's critical to the success of the project. You know, it's not so much public relations, it's just making sure we get a good product out of it, so.
We're all going to have to pay for it for a very long time, so having as much buy-in in the design and acceptance of the project is critical.
Yeah. Okay. I note that it is now 10:30, and so I'm kind of unless there's public comments, people have waited around. I'm not going to cut them off, but.
I just have one, which is on the school building committee charge. It's probably worth looking at the current MSBA regulations to see what MSBA thinks is the right composition for a school building committee.
It's a very good suggestion.
Thank you.
And Tom, I would like to make a very brief.
Please.
So I'm providing an update on the town manager search, which I think folks would be appreciative of. We received 50 application resumes completed for the position. Most of them, 13 of them in the state, but, 30 from Massachusetts and from around the country. Very high qualified group of people. Our consulting firm, MRI, has moved that number down to 19. And they sent a set of essay questions to these 19 people. These are essay questions approved by the Town Manager Search Committee. As of this morning, they'd received 14 responses from the 19. 2 people have withdrawn, and 1 was given an extension for a family emergency. Of the 14 responses, the 10 were male, 14 were female. 11 were from Massachusetts and 3 from out of state. What they will do is complete the process of receiving these essay questions, and then their next task is to have phone interviews with the respondents. And then the search committee is meeting its next meeting on April the 4th, where we will whittle the number down from whatever the 19 what number is to somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 or so, and then invite those 6 folks in for interviews with the search committee in executive session, and then we will recommend a number to the select board, which will meet in open session, I think on Saturday, April 27th, here in the hearing room, to interview and then make a final selection. So I wanted to get that update.
Right, no, thank you, that's important. I think the only other thing is number 17, the election officer appointments. Yeah, we need to do that. There's 2 names listed, and I think, do we have a motion to?
I move to appoint election officers as listed on the town clerk's memo dated March 15th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm willing now to.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody, for coming.